The hour of 6:30 has arrived, so let's start this business meeting of Urbana School District 116. Roll call, please.
Member Hickson? Member Stanton?
Yep.
Member Langendorf? Here. Member Baxley? No. Member Jones?
Here.
President Pulowski?
Here.
Vice President Exon?
Here.
Note that Member Baxley is on vacation and missing tonight, but he'll be here next week. Are there any additions, corrections, or modifications of tonight's agenda? Hearing none. I'd like to move on to citizen statements. If anybody would like to make a statement before the board, there are goldenrod sheets in the back of the room. Please fill one out and hand it to Lori Johnson. We only have one so far, and that's Julie Duvall.
Good evening. I just wanted to say that it has come to my attention that there are some issues within the SPED department, some changes within the district, and I can't really speak. I don't have enough information. I haven't researched a lot of what's going on. But I did want to bring to the board's attention that I sat up here for many meetings trying to advocate that Thomas Paine is a SPED school, and it was designed, not a SPED school, but it had the SPED classrooms, and it was designed. And some of the comments that I've heard that were made from admin, it's a little alarming to me that SPED is kind of being dismissed. I just want to remind you that there are teacher shortages going on. I've been working with another district in the area. I am very thankful that we have the board that we do. Dr. Ivor Tatum, I can always call you, and Paul, you've always treated me kindly at board meetings. I think that some of these area districts are in a lot of trouble. One school in particular has 17 vacancies in SPED. So for us, while Angie Franklin is working her butt off to recruit people, we have to be mindful that there's another area of town that pays higher that is in desperate need. I just want to state that it feels like a switch and bait. Dr. Ivor Tatum, I know I spoke to you, and you and I were very upfront with each other of what your intention was, and that yes, you can't take away from your SPED kids. Sending kids over to King isn't a bad thing, but remember that some of these kids have bathrooms and laundry facilities, things that I came up here and argued and brought to your attention of why it was so important. And I just think that there are some staff concerns, there are parent concerns, there's transparency. I was just at a Challenger League baseball meeting, and two parents came up to me and said, are they even going to honor our petition? And so I think that you guys we have a good board, and we really are a good school system. Nobody's perfect, but we have to work on this transparency. And if I had reached out to a couple of board members, and they weren't even aware of these changes. We were under the impression that the 5 SPED rooms were going to stay at Thomas Paine. And if they need to change, again, I don't know the legalities. I haven't looked all into that. But I do know that Urbana is a good school, and this is a good board, and we have a great district. And we have to be different than other local areas and be transparent with that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and then when I find out more, I'll let you guys know. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too, Julie. Thank you. Does anybody else wish to make a statement before the board? Does anybody else wish to make a statement before the board this evening? Going once, going twice? That's it for citizen statements. There will be no executive session after tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no commendations and recognitions or communications tonight, so let's move on to our first administrative report, an equity action plan update from Dr. Caffey.
So Dr. Caffey's not here, so can I have the clicker, John? I'm going to start us off. Dr. Caffey's daughter just in the last day or so, qualified for some major track and field event someplace in Illinois. Sorry, I can't remember where. Okay. So I am sitting in for Dr. Caffey this morning. So if our equity strand leaders, Peter, you want to at least come maybe just to the front row. And I think, Donardo, you're going to be presenting too for Dr. Caffey. You want to come up in that way? We can just already all be in place. Okay. So our goal for today is just to review. I know we have a couple new board members who are not as familiar with our equity action work and the equity action plan. So just recently our district equity leadership team met for 2 full days with our facilitator, Dr. Dubiel, and planned our year 2 goals and objectives for the equity action plan work for 24-25. Our goal for today, though, is to focus on updating progress on the goals that we had set aside for this school year. Very similar to what our schools have been doing, and I'm kind of sharing the goals that they worked on this year and then sharing progress. So that is our goal for today. We'll come back in the future and share the upcoming goals for the 24-25 school year. So we're not doing that today. But I did want to thank our strand leaders, and I know we have some other people here in the audience from the district equity leadership team who met for 2 full days last week to really kind of go through our progress, talk about kind of the state of equity and where we are, and do some great planning work for next year. So I'm going to go through these really quickly. Those were our objectives. I just did that. Sorry, I'm looking at my screen instead of the big screen. So historical equity efforts. So just to give a little history, I know Member Hickson wasn't here and last year when we had this similar presentation. So just to make sure everyone in our audience may be listening from home. So just a little history of Urbana's equity efforts. So in 1994, the district developed its first comprehensive district plan around equity for students at risk. And then in 1998, the district went through a full district-wide equity audit process, and a climate report was completed. That was our last initiative around completing an equity audit and equity, really significant equity work. So from 1998 to 2016, the district, of course, and very recently around 2016, 17, 18, there was a lot of work around racial equity in the district, professional development. We had a racial equity leadership team who hosted workshops at schools, at staff meetings. We had people right here in this room who led a lot of those conversations to really bring our staff the learning around equity efforts. And most of that staff, that was all kind of driven from within with our own folks leading those professional development opportunities. And then in 2018, the board adopted a racial equity resolution that was written at the board level and shared. And then in 2021, the district formed an equity task force so we could begin to look at how we could more intentionally break some barriers and just do a lot of the work that needed to be done to really put all of our students on the same level footing academically, behaviorally, for their future outcomes. So we had a very large group of folks. 2021, if you remember, was during the height of remote learning. So this task force started all remotely, which was really interesting. Meeting every month virtually to have these discussions and really have these really intentional conversations, not in person, and I think we were able to do that. So I appreciate all the people who represented the work of the task force. One of the first tasks that the group felt really passionate about was if we're going to hold people accountable to to breaking down barriers and providing more opportunities. We need to have language around that to hold people's feet to the fire, so to speak. And so the equity, educational equity policy was drafted by the committee. It was kind of shared around the community. We had it on our website for a couple years. I went to a few PTA meetings, and then we have brought it back again for the board to hopefully approve it tonight as part of the racial, the Press 114 language that we have around racial equity in our new policy language that the board is hopefully adopting tonight. Then another big task for the task force was completing our second district-wide equity audit, and that was completed in 2023. It took us a while to find a consultant, but we were happy to be able to work with Dr. Dubio from Systemic Equity, and she's worked with us now going on 2 years. So last year around this same time, the group, the district equity leadership team, which included some original task force members and then some new folks, created year one of the equity action plan. And we have been working on the goals around that, and that's what we're going to share out tonight. So the Equity Action Plan is an accountability framework to identify, measure, and sustain actions to advance equity. It is a collaborative process developed with district stakeholders and relies on systemic commitment to best serve all students. So here are some of the members of the committee. There are administrators here, some district support staff, district teachers, a couple parents, board members who have been part of this process. And the 5 strands of systemic equity. So we started with 5 strands: systems, teaching and learning, student voice, climate and culture, professional learning, and family and community agency. So those are the 5 strands that you're going to hear from tonight, and we're just going to kind of go through and update the goals of each strand's work and share our progress. So I'm going to start us off with the systems group. Joe Wiemelt, Dr. Wiemelt is our facilitator for the systems strand. He is with several other district leaders and teachers from the middle school and the high school at the AVID conference this week. So he is unavailable to represent the systems strand, but Peter and I are both part of the systems strand, so we will push forward on behalf of Joe. So systems. To ensure a systemic and continuous development toward advancing equity within all policies, processes, procedures, initiatives, decision-making, and fiscal responsibilities. So basically, the systems group is the accountability group for our strand, for all of our work across all strands. So we are responsible for making sure that the policies are being implemented, that we've put structures in place to make sure that the people doing the equity work have what they need to make decisions, and then we have put some financial resources in place. So building leaders who are, and our strand leaders who are doing the work can do that and have the fiscal means in order to make those goals happen. So this is the system strand, and again, as I mentioned, Joe is kind of our leader. And what were our objectives? So a lot of our conversation the last 2 years has really been about recruiting and retaining specialized staff and continue our efforts to diversify our staff. We want our teachers and our support staff members to reflect our student body. So that's basically what this goal is all about. So the measure that we put in place was to monitor recruitment and hiring practices to increase and retain 80% of our current specialized and diverse staff members. So our progress at the bottom here is kind of an update on where we landed with this goal this year. So for staff diversity retention data, out of 419 staff members of color, 92% are returning for the school year, 24-25. So that's amazing, basically 93%, which is a huge celebration. So that's awesome. Hard to fill position retention data. So hard to fill is a term that we use for positions like Ms. Duvall just kind of mentioned, our special ed folks, right? So special ed positions right now are considered hard to fill because so many districts have so many openings. Typically, dual language positions are hard to fill. Sometimes those specialist positions like social workers and psychologists and roles like that are usually hard to fill. But for us, we focused on special education and our multilingual and DL positions as our hard to fill areas of focus for this year. And out of 117 special education and DL, ML staff members, 91% are returning for the 24-25 school year. So that is also a great celebration. Another one of our goals for recruitment and retention was to begin something called affinity groups. And affinity groups are groups where people who identify and kind of like-minded or just have a lot in common can form their own groups away from administration, outside of school, and find ways to connect with one another so they can kind of form their own bonds around the work that they do in the district. So we've worked hard to establish, we've had an LGBTQ affinity group that wasn't able to meet as often this year. We've tried a Latina affinity group. And again, these are led by staff members, not administrators. So finding people willing to put in the commitment to kind of get an affinity group up and going has been a little harder than we thought it would be. So out of all of the affinity groups that we really tried to establish, the African American affinity group was formed this year and is really off to a good start under the leadership of LaDonna Helm, teacher at Leo School. She kind of leads that group, and she's hosted a couple networking events, various meetings, and typically about 25 to 50 of our African American Black staff members have been attending that affinity group. So we're anticipating that group is going to grow. Of course, we want to make sure that we grab all of our new teachers and new hires next year who might want to be part of that group. But we're going to continue that as a goal and really try hard to get some of our other, hopefully other affinity groups up and going next year. Sure, as we go. Whoops.
I'm curious, African American and Black, did that include African teachers?
It includes anyone who identifies, we don't tell them what they are, it's what they identify as. So
Yeah,
yes.
that'd be
So,
dangerous.
Yes, so our, you mean like our French teachers?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
if
anybody.
anyone who identifies as Black or African American can participate in this group. Yeah, it is a self-selected group. Good question. Any HR questions around this data that is here? Peter Furch is our director of HR. I don't know if Peter's had a chance to come and present before the board yet. Have you been here yet, Peter? Not officially. So,
I don't know if you know this at the top of your head, but you know, 92.84% seems like an awesome retention number. And do you know what the district's overall retention number is, as a point of comparison?
So I don't have that data off the top of my head, but we can get that for you. It would be the same process that we used to gather the data we presented today to give an overall comparison to the all for the district. We can get that to you.
okay, I'll keep going. So I already talked about this goal. This was a goal from the last 2 years to really implement our equity policy that was written by the Equity Task Force. And so that hopefully will be a goal that will be met after tonight. And then another systems goal was to evaluate, update policies, data collection systems, communication and instructional practices for barriers to access and full engagement for students. So this is really our data goal, like that our district leadership will meet quarterly to review our data, to look at progress monitoring, look at our student achievement, and really drill down and start looking at those prioritized groups, like our Black students, our Latino students, our students with disabilities, our multilingual learners, and really make sure that those groups and all of our students, number one, but because this is an equity goal, that our students who are behind the achievement gap of their peers are also making progress. So data review during the 23-24 school year resulted in the system strand prioritizing their focus on culture and climate. So one of the areas that we've talked about here at the board level too is discipline has been a struggle this year. Classroom management has been more difficult, and so one of the areas, the most significant area that the system strand spent a lot of time around was really talking about consistency regarding exclusionary practices for suspensions, expulsions, bullying investigations, accurate data reporting, discipline referral systems and procedures. So we just hit the tip of the iceberg in doing this year. Dr. Caffey was here earlier in the year and presented the state board the fact that we were once again identified as a district with too many of our Black students being excluded and out of class. So that is another reason why this is a big focus for us is the majority of our students that are out of class on discipline referrals or excluded for suspensions and or expulsions are our Black students. And so that is an area of focus for us. It was this year and it will continue to be next year. And then, of course, I mentioned this earlier, sorry. John has a new remote here. Okay, so in order to do the work, we often in our district, unfortunately, have to talk about having financial resources to do certain things. So having money and having the advocacy support for our strands to be able to do the work that they are going to talk about here in the next few minutes was really important. So I don't know if you remember in our budget this year, Katie allocated a certain amount of money specifically for equity action work. I can't remember if it was $20,000. I can't remember how much it was, but we set aside a specific amount for things like stipends for to pay our adult team members who do a lot of this work outside of the school day, to provide financial support for our strand leaders that may need to have a family engagement event or provide us very specific professional development. So one of our goals was to make sure that we put a process in place where strand leaders didn't have to figure out how are we going to pay for this or how am I going to do this work, that we set aside budget money and funding to make sure that they could reach those goals and accomplish the tasks that they set for themselves as a group. So the next strand is teaching and learning, and I'm doing this one too because as you all know, Dr. Norton has moved on, and she was the leader of this group. So the Teaching and Learning Group was a group that was designed to intentionally embed equity-driven pedagogy in curriculum, resources, instructional approaches, use and consideration of assessments, and academic programming for the purpose of advancing equity among all students. So this was the Teaching and Learning Group. And their first goal was to develop a curriculum map and curriculum teams for each grade level that aligns to standards, scope and sequence, instructional supports, rigor, cultural and linguistic pedagogy and practices, and autonomy for equitable resources. So as you know, we've been doing a lot of curriculum work around our implementation of illustrative math this year. And then we also adopted a new English language arts and Spanish language arts curriculum. So both of those are driven by curriculum mapping and scope and sequence work moving forward. And then their second goal was to provide opportunities for collaboration with monolingual, dual language, and special education programs. So if you remember when the CAL consultant came and talked to us about the CAL program evaluation, one of the biggest needs from the evaluation, and one of the biggest needs we were hearing from our dual language teachers and a lot of our staff members who work with our multilingual learners and our students with special needs, was just time for collaboration. Having time across buildings, across grade levels, to be able to talk to one another and plan together was really difficult. So one of the things that was put in place through this particular strand was quarterly collaboration time across disciplines, so these groups could meet to discuss alignment. The multicultural leadership team, led by Lupe, she created a district-wide team across buildings to meet monthly to address the implications and actions from the CAL evaluation. So the evaluation had some very specific action steps that we needed to take as part of that program evaluation. So things like looking at our curriculum, engaging our families. One of the recommendations was to unify the STRAND program into one school. So the multilingual leadership team really met every month to kind of go through the program evaluation and talk about the recommendations from the evaluation and how they were going to put those things in place. And then, of course, one of our goals was intentional professional development for working with multilingual students and scaffolding strategies for our teachers. So we often do that work through Winter Institute, opening day PD, and then staff PD sessions that happen throughout the school year. So one of the data points that we were able to pull pretty quickly is that on our Winter Institute Day in February, 592 staff members participated in the multilingual strand work that happened as part of our professional development at Winter Institute, which is a great number. Did it move? Okay. Examining root causes of lower performance of African American and Latino students, our ELL students. So this is data that we've talked about a lot here lately. We've talked about our MAP data, we've talked about SAT, Panorama. So really the group was talking about what are some of the, why are our African American and our Latino students performing lower than their peers, their white and Asian peers. So John is going to share some of the specific data points, but just a few of the root causes that were discussed were really taking time to use data to communicate with staff about disparities in learning, and that all of our students learn differently, and not everyone learns using the same modalities, and that's something we need to really help make sure our staff members understand that. Using data to drive our decision making and our school improvement goal setting for the future, really making sure we're making data-driven decisions using MAP, and also involving students in that process. So there's a goal setting feature in MAP where our students can engage around setting a goal for their own learning. So that's something they talked about doing, and hopefully we're going to be doing that more next year. And then professional development at K-5, 6-12, around language arts and math, specifically around working with struggling students who are part of those high priority groups of African American and MLL. So John is going to kind of just share some of the progress data from this particular goal.
Yep, and some of this data is, some of these you might have seen before, and some of this is brand new for the last couple weeks. These two graphs here show the number of third grade students. We often look at third grade students and ninth grade students as kind of consistent benchmarks of where our students are performing. So on the left, you'll see the third grade students reading below proficiency, and the number for Black and African American students is 94%. So almost the entire cohort of third grade students. Hispanic and Latino students is a little better at around 75%. Sorry, 85% for Black and African American. This is compared to white and Asian students who are right around 45% for each of those. So just highlighting the kind of achievement gaps there. On the right side, these are fresh from our PSAT test that the students took earlier this year. And these are, if you're not familiar with them, box and whisker plot. So that middle orange box is kind of the middle 50 percentile, 50% of the students and where they performed on the PSAT test. And then the two top and bottom whiskers is where the other 50% lies. So as you can see again, white and Asian students, the achievement gap is fairly significant between that, and Black and Hispanic students also have a little narrower kind of band of achievement there.
Do you also have the aggregated numbers as well? Not in the, I mean, I appreciate the disaggregation. We have to have that, but just for comparison purposes, having the aggregated numbers is useful.
I do. I'll get that. It's in a different Excel file, but I'll send that to the board as soon as we're done here.
Thank you.
Also, is this a reading test for third grade in Spanish, or is everything is in English?
This is reading for English, and I believe this also includes this. This does not include the Spanish reading. This is just the English reading. We have a different graph for the Spanish reading that includes different schools, but we have that as well.
So for the Duolingo program, how is the kids are tested, the third grade?
They take for third grade, they take the English and the Spanish reading test,
So
and
they
we
have
have
double.
both of those scores.
There is a way to compare because obviously they're probably predominant Spanish in some cases. So there is a way to compare if there is like how they are doing comparison language.
Yeah, and I think at the last board meeting, we had the Spanish scores also, and I can probably pull those up for you. There was still kind of a achievement gap even for the Spanish scores there.
All right, thank you.
So this is third grade math. This is pulled straight out of Illinois School Report Card. If you guys haven't been in Illinois School Report Card, it's a great resource for lots of data, student achievement and district data as well. But again, this is showing Black and Hispanic students, and this is the green is performing at or above grade level, and the yellow, orange, and red is below grade level. So again, really some areas for concern and growth for the math IAR results.
Sorry.
Oop. Sorry. So this is the, so this one was the, okay. This is the achievement. If moving forward to the growth, this is, again, as we highlighted last board meeting, the growth, you want them to be above 50% to be kind of catching up for the percentage of growth achievement for growth. So this is ELA, and compared to the state, which is at 16 and 22%, our Black students are at 3.4%, and Hispanic students are 7%. This is IAR, so this is just English test for ELA. For math, it's similar compared to the state, which is 47 and 48 respectively. The Black students are having math growth at 38%, and Hispanic students are at 40%. And then this is just kind of one more way to look at things. This is similar. This is the same exact data for third grade ELA, but this is showing the kind of achievement gap built out for our students in the kind of beige-ish versus the state. So some of ours, the achievement gap is actually lower than the state achievement gaps for white and black students, but our performance is also a little bit lower than the state. So that makes the achievement gap slightly smaller. Sorry? Yep. So, and then at the bottom, this is comparing the achievement gap for white and Hispanic students, and you can see those same numbers there. And that this is showing the progression over the last 5 years. So, this is the same chart for math, and it's similar. It's actually been getting, the achievement gap has been going down over the past 5 years, but also the total achievement has been decreasing over the last 5 years as well. And similarly for white and Hispanic students at the bottom. So that's, I think, just to illustrate some of the why that we're doing this work and some of the data that we're focusing on. We look at the data fairly regularly. We do map testing 3 times a year, which is very important to be able to track and identify and provide supports for students who need it as early as we can. So.
Okay, thanks, John. So yes, as you can see from our data dig, our little brief data dig that we just walked you through, this is why we're making so many significant changes for next year, is we really need to do some things differently to help all of our students be successful. So moving to the next strand, I'm going to introduce Donardo Williams. He is representing the Student Voice Climate and Culture strand. He is our lead student engagement advocate from Thomas Paine. So I'll turn it over to Donardo.
Good evening. This strand was the Student Voice Climate and Culture strand, and it was created to consistently seek students' feedback and experiences on organizational culture and climate. And these are the members. Our strand leader is Dr. Caffey, who is outgoing as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Our objective was establish the Student Equity Advisory Committee. That was our first objective. And those are the measures. We data mined through panorama surveys. We compiled a list of current and needed affinity groups. One of our big goals was to hire and designate the Minority Enrichment Program Coordinator and or affinity group coordinators. And that was done. Identify Equity Advisory Committee student structure and identify the group members, and to create and develop a comprehensive resource list. Most of the school buildings have a comprehensive resource list. Our results were students at UMS and UHS, that's the middle school and high school, were surveyed during the fall semester to assess their interest in serving on the Student Equity Advisory Committee and which affinity groups they were interested in establishing or expanding. The high school Student Equity Advisory Committee was officially formed and met regularly during the year after the new Minority Enrichment Program Coordinator was hired. The UHS Student Equity Advisory members also met with the District Parent Advisory Committee to discuss safety measures at the high school. And with the hiring of Miles Roosevelt, he oversaw the Student Equity Advisory Group as well as other affinity groups and provided them with opportunities and a safe space to voice their concerns, but also encouraged them to volunteer and provide service throughout our community. So that was pretty good. Go to, where is it? Go back. Develop positive connections targeted at Black African American students or students who qualified for free and reduced lunch, in parentheses, economically disadvantaged. We looked at the discipline improvement plan, graduation dropout rates, and attendance rates. The results were the internal manifest mentoring program was expanded from 4 to 5 buildings with more than 100 African American males mentored on a weekly basis. They were at Thomas Paine, Yankee Ridge, Dr. Williams, King, and UMS. One student at Leo was also in the program. The attendance rates for those mentored improved more than 20% over the course of the year. Suspension rates were also significantly reduced for the mentees from the previous school year. And I can attest to that due to this mentoring group at my school and a couple of the other schools, because I'm in all the buildings. The kids' attitudes has changed towards school. The infractions that were occurring became less. So I think they thrived because of this program. However, we would love for the program to continue, but with the departure of Dr. Caffey, some reorganization and structural changes will need to be in place for this to happen. However, I will do whatever I can to make sure that our boys are getting mentored by someone that they trust and see on a daily basis.
Thank you, Donardo. Next is Mrs. Yvonda Smith, our Director of Professional Development.
Good evening. I am going to cover the professional learning strand. The purpose is to provide a continuum of professional learning and growth opportunities for all staff in pursuit of educational equity. There were 2 goals underneath. Sorry, I skipped one. These are our current strand members, as you see, and we are adding more for next year. But we had 2 objectives, and they kind of go hand in hand. The first objective was to provide professional learning opportunities for all staff, and the second goal objective was to review professional development frameworks. So out of our equity audit, it was very clear that we have staff members that opt out or opt in for certain professional development. Now, we believe that all of our students matter in all of our districts, just as well as our staff. So to ensure that all of our staff receive training on multilingual and also LGBTQIA, what we did first at opening day, we had a whole strand of just multilingual sessions. So everybody had to sign in. It was in person at Urbana Middle School. Then also we had an LGBTQIA strand, and it was in person as well, and that was facilitated by our LGBTQIA task force members, our local committee. Okay. At Winter Institute, we were able to do this again. So we provided 2 opportunities district-wide because we wanted to make sure that they didn't just receive training once, but that there was some type of continuation. So at Winter Institute, we had the welcoming schools, and they did all of the sessions for LGBTQIA. There were sessions for early childhood through 5th grade, secondary, and also for our office support staff. So it was catered to whatever their role was. We also had a strand of multilingual sessions, and those strands were either from the Center for Teaching for Biliteracy, the Illinois Resource Center, and also we had Dr. Lee from the University of California to do a session as well. We wanted to make sure, because one of our goals is to make sure we're bringing in engaging, research-based, updated materials for our staff so that they can include and support all of our students. And the point that we were trying to make is just because a student is not in a dual language school, all of our students receive all support across our district. So this was an early childhood through 12th grade initiative, and we find that we were successful this year. We did take the feedback that was given at all of the sessions. We sent that feedback to all of our facilitators in providing them feedback on how our district received their messages as well. We are currently planning right now with Dr. Ivory Tatum on how we're going to roll out things for next year because we're going to do a continuation. One of the things that was brought up that we're going to continue because we're going to expand this year is we're going to provide more professional development opportunities ongoing throughout the school year. This will look like having inquiry groups, having someone come in and facilitate conversations, but also through book studies. So there'll be several opportunities outside of this, just the 2 district-wide venues. We use our evaluations at every single professional development. That includes opening day, staff development days, and also Winter Institute to currently plan for our future and our ongoing professional development that we provide. The last thing is this year, we were able to include all of our staff in training. And I know I mentioned that before under the Title II when I was doing my report for that. But we can successfully say that we have provided a space for all of our roles in our district to receive professional development this year.
Okay. And last but not least is the Family and Community Agency, led by our Director of Student and Family Engagement, Ms. Deanna Webster. I know I mixed the words up, so you can fix it.
It's ever changing. It's whatever you
I
want
know.
it to be. Good evening, everyone. The Family and Community Agency strand is to partner with families and community for authentic opportunities to serve students, school, and district. We are growing as well in terms of members. We are actively recruiting role members, so we have a few new members, but we are continuously trying to add them just so that we have more voice, and we want a variety of parent and community partners on the committee and on the strand so that we can meet as many families' needs as possible. Our first objective is to establish an engaging community space that supports equity. This year, we want to focus on maintaining attendance. Last year, we did family cafes district-wide. We had 4 scheduled. We changed the 4th one because attendance was just declining district-wide. The first one, we had 12 families. The second one, we had approximately 9. And the third one, we had 4. So we just weren't seeing the attendance district-wide, but we have seen more attendance at the school building level. So what we're going to do is keep the family cafe model, which is basically grouping people in small groups, giving them conversation topics, and they talk about them in small groups. And the one thing that we saw, even though we had small groups, we really loved the conversations that people had that were authentic. And one of our goals last year was to amplify unheard voices. So we had a lot of parents who came out that normally wouldn't and didn't normally feel heard, so they were comfortable in the smaller spaces and rotating. So we want to mimic that this year in the schools. We feel like people will be more comfortable in their home school, so we'll do the same thing, support the principals in doing that at the building level. And then our goal is to hopefully increase attendance by 5 each community roundtable meeting that the schools have. And 5 may sound like a small number, but when you think about the school year, how busy families are, students are, and going different places, we think 5 is a reasonable goal to increase based on the attendance. So if they had 5 the first time, increase by 5 more in 10. Everybody invite a friend, principals do personal invitations, family liaisons do the same, and we all work together just to make our families feel comfortable of coming into our school space. We also we want to focus on meeting with building administrators and using the family school relationship panorama survey data to determine where we need to go from here. So we looked at the survey data last week when we were planning and looked at some of the numbers and decided these are the 2 goals that we want to focus on, because we were very impressed that a lot of our families feel comfortable in the school spaces. So we want to continue to make sure that they feel comfortable, get more feedback, and continue to focus on that. Our second one was 5.2, is a new one this year, is create a welcoming and inclusive environment that supports equity. Again, we want all of our families to feel welcome. We know families looks different, and we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome, whether they're a parent, a grandparent, an uncle, and aunt. Sometimes we have foster parents, et cetera, or just neighbors who love and care for our students. So we want everyone to feel welcome in our spaces. So the results are the same, that we reviewed the panorama data, and we're going to continue to focus on increasing, and the measure indicators that we're going to use for this one is the 5 essential survey data in the fall, panorama survey data in the spring, and maintain and increase attendance. And we're going to work on possibly, we don't want to over-assess families, but possibly doing 2 panorama surveys. That's something that we're working on, one in the fall and one in the spring, because we feel like we can't compare panorama data if we're only doing one in the spring. 5 essential survey data is in the fall, but the questions are different, and we did look at them. The questions are different and just not giving us the data that we want. But again, we also have to be mindful of we don't want to send too many surveys, so that's a work in progress at this time. Those are our plans.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So those were all 5 strands, and again, we'll come back. Our goal tonight was really just to give you a progress update on year 1. And again, this was our first year, so I feel like we did a good job of kind of establishing some baseline goals for all 5 strands. And then we spent a lot of time talking with Dr. Caffey was there, but also our incoming new director of equity and school improvement, Chastity Beckless, participated with us So we really did spend a lot of time talking about measurable goals, and now that we've kind of started the action plan, using our goals from this year as our springboard to now being able to dig a little deeper and have more measurable goals for next year. So I was trying to get back to all 5 strands so you could see that image. So then if you had a question about one in particular, you could ask. So any questions?
Board members, any questions for any of the strand leaders?
I have a couple for professional learning. When the teacher assistants also are getting support, and they are getting, what kind of support are they getting?
You teaching assistants, you want to do it?
That's a very good question. This year, we provided a variety of professional development. We did start off with just paraprofessional training one-on-one. What does it mean to be not only a teaching assistant, but also serving as a role in the school? Like, everybody's role matters. We also did, on April the 19th, which was the last staff development day, we made sure that all of our teaching assistants received the content-specific PD. So if they were at elementary, they attended the CKLA or the Caminos training. If they were at the middle school and the high school, secondary level, they received the HMH training as well. We are trying to make sure that all of our teaching assistants not only have paraprofessional training, but also that they know what content we're doing too as well. And we want to make sure that it's inclusive. Our last training, we just had 3 sessions 2 weeks ago on co-teaching, and it talked about making people a part of the classroom environment. Like, everybody is there for all of the students and having that working partnership.
Are they also getting some sort of training for being a special aid? The special aid part?
So one of the things that we negotiated this year in our bargaining with the union and our new contract is for the first time we've invited teaching assistants to participate in anything that we're doing. It was new language that we added to the contract because our teaching assistants are very capable and they want to feel like professionals, right? They see the teachers getting a lot of these professional learning opportunities over the past few years, and they wanted to be able to participate in that. And a lot of the school improvement work that was happening, a lot of times was happening after school and staff meetings when the TAs leave and they're not part of those conversations. And so this year, we really, every teaching assistant who wanted to, they weren't mandated to, like some of them work extra jobs and need to leave after school. But for those who wanted to participate in any professional development that was offered at the building level, they were able to stay and then be compensated to stay after school to participate. So,
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Can I ask, what does the Minority Enrichment Program Coordinator do? And is that a full-time job? Is it an administrative job or a teacher that does it part-time? Or
you want me to do it? Okay, yeah. So that is a position we've had at the high school, gosh, for many years. It was implemented, I think, even when Matt Stark was there.
That's right.
And so it's a position that it was intentionally put in to provide supports for our students of color. So making sure that they had the opportunity to participate in specific clubs and enrichment activities, and also providing a space for our students of color to feel like they can participate in higher honors classes and AP classes. Just creating a really rich environment of learning across the school. So that has been a full-time position for many years. We had a couple really dynamic people in those roles who left, and so the position has been open for over a year or 2 years. We haven't been able to find someone, and so Mr. Roosevelt, is that, I can't think of his first name, yes. So he's new, Miles. So he started mid-year even. I mean, it wasn't even at the beginning of the year. And from what I've heard, he's doing a fabulous job. He was working at the high school in a different role and saw the need amongst the students and went into Mr. Guzman and said, I really want to do this work. And so he left the job that he had and moved into the MEP job. So, yeah, we haven't had someone doing it for at least a year and a half. So we're excited to have that person that our students have a person they can go to that they trust that is helping them advocate the system and be part of UHS, so.
They also do some college visits and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
different
Oh,
ethnic
yeah.
days as well. So like NAPIT, they would plan that. They plan involvement. They sometimes have assemblies. But I know they've come before the board before to help support even like going off on college tours and different learning activities.
Good question.
With all the online activities that parents can do, such as enrolling their children at schools, perhaps they're not coming into the schools as often as they have in the past. So what are other ways that parents can come and participate in the school day with their children, besides coming in for a specific family engagement activity that you plan?
We have several different events during the day. So like last year was the first year we had Bring Your Parent to School Day. I believe that was in October, so we'll do that again. So there's different opportunities, and parents can just contact the school. Some buildings have like a 2-day, they just want a 2-day time period just to plan to have the parent visit and to make sure they have proper seating. So parents are always welcome to go to the schools and visit. They just need to contact either the community mentor coordinator at the building if they have one, or the principal or assistant principal to come in. And there's always ways of lots of our principals send s'mores or family newsletters to keep parents involved, volunteer efforts. Lots of teachers invite parents to come in and share information with their students about information. So those are the main ways of just really reaching out to the school and finding out what they can do within their time, because a lot of parents just can't come after hours, which is why we're trying to change it and be more flexible in that, because we realize that work schedules are different and time demands are different. So the main thing that I always say is to reach out to your school's administrator and find out what's the best fit for you. But we know that engagement looks different than just being present. If your children are at school, clothed, fed, homework is completed, they're actively engaged, and we count that as well. It's just hard to quantify that. So when you ask me for data, I can't give you data on that, but we do know that it's happening.
Anyone else? Any questions? All right, thank you
Thank
very much. Thanks to
you.
all the Strand members for their work, and for Dr. Caffey as well for leading this whole effort. Next up are our student improvement updates from the building administrators.
Okay, so very similarly to last meeting, we have all of our building leaders here to talk about their school improvement plans. So if you remember, these are just updates. They may talk a little bit about what they're doing next year, but mostly the goal for tonight was really just to update their current progress. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, we're switching to a new continuous school improvement template in consultation with the State Board of Education and our consultant who works with the district. So we'll be bringing those plans back in the fall. Just wanted to say that again. And so tonight the focus is really talking about their goals from this year and progress made. So we're going to start off. Tonight's focus is early childhood and elementary. And our new principal from Urbana Early Childhood Center, Katie Madigan, is going to start us off.
All right, I got it. Thank you for having me. I just want to start out by saying I watched the meeting last time so I could kind of see what everyone else was talking about. And I noticed that Jen Roan gave a little caveat on how their school ran. And like Gerber, Urbana Early Childhood is a little bit special. We don't operate under the same ways that some of the elementary, middle, and high school students do. And so my new school improvement team met together on May 31st, and we really looked deep at our data. And I just wanted to emphasize something that one of them came up with, and I really love that. We recognize that parents are the first teachers of our students, but Urbana Early Childhood School is the first school. As we kind of want to make that maybe our new motto, is that we're the first school. So we kind of have to do some things special. We don't have our students take standardized assessments in the same way that everyone else does, because it's just not really developmentally appropriate for 3-year-olds to do that. So we have come up with some of our own assessments for literacy and math, because we do recognize that those are also really important, and that they're the precursor to learning to read and continuing through math skills as you go along. So our first goal was increasing our we wanted to look at vocabulary, and so we took the BAME test of Basic Concepts 3 for preschool, which has 50 items that tests words kind of like your positional, time, and quantity concepts, and if students can identify that. And we picked out 10 that we felt were really important. And so we made our own checklist for our students and measured these students in the fall, the winter, and then the spring. And we were looking for students who were with us for primarily the whole school year, had some pretty good attendance, and if they could increase their score on this checklist by at least 2. Unfortunately, we wanted all of our students to make that kind of progress, but we didn't quite see that this year. We saw 76% of them increase, and 20% of our students stayed at the same number, so they identified the same number of concepts from the beginning to the end of the school year. Our teachers did utilize a system of assessing effectiveness of vocabulary instruction. Students participated in explicit vocabulary instruction throughout their day. We identified these priority basic concept words like outside, empty, first, around. And we felt these were developmentally appropriate to teach and assess for all of the age levels in our school. Our teachers were using read alouds that were inclusive of other languages and cultures besides English, and student guided themes, units, and projects of instruction also included this targeted vocabulary. So our plan for the future is to continue to target this vocabulary. It's not the only vocabulary that we teach, of course, but it's just the one that we are using to measure some progress on these skills. Our second goal had to do with math. And again, there isn't a standardized assessment for 3 to 5-year-olds for math, but there is something called Math Right from the Start. And so our team took that tool and modified it to and really looked at what was one of the more important things. So we recognize that rote counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is important, but connecting numbers to quantity is something that we felt was more important as they move forward. And so we give our students this same 3 times a year. We give our students a collection of 12 items, so maybe 12 blocks, and ask the student to give us 3, give us 5, and give us 10. And we're kind of looking to see if students can increase their understanding of quantity to the number over the school year. So the same kinds of things were in place, that we wanted the students to be there for most of the school year and have attendance greater than 85%. On this, we also did not have all of our students increase, but we still had 67% of our students increased their connecting numbers to quantity, and 32% stayed the same. Our classroom staff learned and utilized a variety of strategies like counting, commenting on numbers, questioning, to prompt children to think about quantity and number words. We engaged in several professional development sessions on number talks given to us by Beth Mears, which was really, really popular, and we saw a lot of our staff, licensed staff and paraprofessionals, using that in the classroom after that was provided. We did have Janet Moore come for professional development at the end of the school year. She was able to provide it for interested teachers and TAs on June 3rd. And then this is another tool that we want to continue to refine and work on for next school year, because we still feel like it's a really important skill that kids need to have as they move forward. Oh yeah, okay. So our third goal was focused on social emotional learning. So like the rest of the district, we've implemented zones of regulation, at the early childhood level. It's very successful with us. We were looking for our students to increase their overall composite score on a zones questionnaire. And this is a questionnaire that has 6 questions that the teachers look at their students. So this is a teacher rating scale. Things like expresses basic emotions, or student reacts appropriately to the emotions of others. And so then the teachers were giving each student a score from 1 to 5, does not demonstrate this skill, up to 5, very capable and does this often, and then adding that all up. And so we called that their composite score for the year. And we were hoping that all of our students would increase their overall composite score on the zones questionnaire. 93% of them did. 4% stayed the same, and we did see a little bit of decrease in our a few of our students, 3%. So we felt like we were very close to meeting this goal. We have a strong focus on social emotional skills at early childhood, because if you're not socially emotionally ready to learn, then you're not going to absorb any of the other academic information. And so our teachers work really hard on implementing second step. We did ongoing trainings for PBIS, continuous second step, and zones of regulation, and a high focus on problem-solving conversations during our weekly collaboration meetings. And then our final goal was our attendance goal. Our goal was that we would maintain a monthly average attendance above 80% for every month of the school year, and I'm very happy to say that we did meet that. We were at 82% or higher every month. 82 was the lowest monthly average attendance, which was December. 88% was the highest, which was September. And it's encouraging to know that our average monthly attendance has been increasing over the last 3 years. So in 21-22 it was 81%, 22-23 it was 84%, and this school year was 85%. We have an attendance team that works really hard, and we've created attendance tiers of support, which I've actually shared with a lot of the other administrators in the district, and I would credit that team with a lot of this improvement over the last several years. We did notice that 56% of our students are considered chronically truant, so I think that's hard at the preschool level because it's non-compulsory attendance. We don't have to make them come. Kids ages 3 to 5 are still building up their immunities, so they're really sick a lot. And they have to rely on their parents to get them to school. They can't get there by themselves. So so those are just some things that we consider when we're thinking about our attendance. And in our school, we make sure that classroom staff is connecting with families when a student has missed 3 consecutive days of school. And so the teacher is the first contact because they're probably the one who has the relationship. And so that's part of one of our steps in our tiers of attendance support. We create individual family support plans when we're noticing that there's something consistently going on that's culturally responsive. And then we were highly utilizing and refining, always changing and addressing our attendance tiers of support. So I think I would credit all of that with us meeting that final goal.
Sorry, board members, any questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to compliment. I know how hard is the job. I worked in there for several times, and I know the teachers and teacher assistants are the happiest members of the team that always are there to cheer up the families and the kids. So thank you.
Any comments or questions?
What specifically did the team do in order to help the families? Were there some examples that you can share so that their children do attend on a more regular basis?
Sure. So we have a Spanish bilingual family coordinator who is a dynamic person. If you ever get to know Nellie Alcala, you would just love her like I do. And she is constantly has a Google Voice number, so she'll notice that families aren't responding, and she'll text them with her Google Voice number. She'll find out that a family is missing school because they're missing 2 shots, and she'll work with them to get an appointment to get those shots taken care of. So those are just little things. Our social workers are on that team, so they might work with families to figure out housing, and transportation, which can be a huge barrier to getting kids to school. But even just like setting little goals, like, hey, you were here, your child was here 2 days last week. Can we get them here 3 next week? And just continuing to advocate for those improvements.
Sorry, I went too far. John has very high tech, so just want to make sure I end up on this on the right page. There are only 3 buttons, but if you click it too hard, it'll go further than you want to be. So good evening. It's an honor to be here with you all tonight to give you an updated status of our goals. Of course, I know you're aware, it's been a lot of talk about Dr. Williams being our Illinois intensive school through Illinois Empower. I have worked closely with our Illinois Empower Schools coordinator throughout the year in collaboration with Mrs. Smith and Dr. Norton, and we have met with her twice a month, almost every single month until we were waiting for the needs assessment from AIR. And we received that in late May, and we're able to meet then in June. So when I come to you and talk about our progress, I'm here to celebrate and acknowledge the progress that we've made. We did not meet all of our goals, but we are overjoyed that we are making steps in the right direction, and looking forward to the continued growth that we will have as we bring on our new curriculum. So I just want to say, while this is one update, I feel like we've come back and talked about our school improvement plan, the things that we're doing to support our staff with professional learning opportunities, as well as what are our outcomes, because of course, that's what's most important, is where are our students achieving, what growth are we seeing. So with all that being shared, I will kind of talk about some of the things we've done under each of these topics. Our first goal was centered around literacy, and we were really able to focus and emphasize on seeing that our students met their growth projection. While we recognize there are huge disparities, not just in our building, but across the district, for our students being at proficiency, we know that it's critical that we stop and look at, are they making their projected growth? We can't expect them to be at proficiency if we aren't even seeing the growth being impacted. And so our goal from last spring was that we would shift from 20% of students in 1st through 5th grade meeting their growth projection in English literacy to 35%, and then seeing a shift from 15% of students in the area of Spanish literacy to 30% of students meeting their growth projection in Spanish literacy, as seen on our NWEA MAP assessment. We were very excited when we looked at our data in the winter, so I wanted to include this because you have to celebrate the things that you are doing well, and if there is a shift, you cannot forget the celebration. So I want to start, when we put our data in the winter, we were excited because we had met both of our goals and exceeded them. So I just want to shout out our staff is really superb in looking at high leverage teaching practices, ensuring that we're utilizing optimal testing conditions when we are giving these assessments, because we recognize that there are barriers in testing if there are distractions and disruptions within the class. So in the winter, our data was 38% of the students met their growth projection, which was higher than our goal in English literacy, English language arts, and 39% in Spanish language arts. Unfortunately, whenever we got to the end of the year assessment, that did have a decrease, and we went down to 29% of the students meeting their growth projections with English language arts, so that we didn't meet that goal, but we exceeded our goal in Spanish language arts of the number of students meeting their growth projection. So while we didn't get there at the end, we were on track and on target. So we absolutely anticipated making the goal, but we recognized that there were other barriers. I could give some hypotheses. We're going to talk about our attendance rates. later in this presentation. I know that's obviously going to be a barrier. When we have a number of students who are missing academic instruction on a regular basis. We continue to talk about the amount of time students are spending outside of class. We know that's going to impact how they perform an assessment when they are missing those learning opportunities. However, we are excited that we were able to really implement UFly and Canciones y Cuentos, which was a scope and sequence for both our English phonics curriculum as well as Spanish. And so that is something we adopted for kindergarten through second grade building wide so that we could make sure that we were continuing to progress. Also being mindful that we were using a lot of resources and asking our teachers to pull together a whole lot of stuff to do a lot of great things with our kids. So we expect continued growth because we have now adopted a research-based curriculum that will give us all of the components as opposed to us trying to pull them together. So we do expect to make continued growth next year and beyond because we recognize that we have, one, started to shift our work into the science of reading, which we did this year, but now having a curriculum that already has done that and has an outline is going to take a lot of the pressure off of our teachers so that they can focus on the implementation of the curriculum as opposed to trying to pull all those resources together to get the best outcomes for our students. We want to wait till the end for questions, or is that okay? Okay. I'll keep going, we'll come back. Related to math, this is the first year that we utilize illustrative math as our adopted curriculum. And so we looked at really increasing we set a very rigorous goal, increasing the number of students who were meeting their growth projections. In the spring of 2023, we had approximately 21% of our students who were meeting their growth projections and really wanted to see that move to 40% of our students, knowing that we had a newly implemented and adopted math curriculum. We were very, very close to meeting that goal. We had 38% of our students meet their growth projections. When we looked at that data in the winter benchmark, we were at 45% of our students. So again, we felt like we were on track. We felt like we've met that goal. We're going to get there in the spring, but we did see some decreases. And we looked at that for first through fifth grade students again. We were implementing our illustrative math curriculum and utilizing our math practices walkthroughs to give feedback on mathematical practices, but really looking forward to making sure that our professional development in the future is truly centered around illustrative math. And while math practices are important and being able to have those math talks with our students, we really want to make sure that our curriculum is something we're following up with staff on and how to make sure we're utilizing engaging teaching strategies with our students. There's a lot of discourse in illustrative math, which is really exciting to see how our students can explain their thinking and what they're learning in math. And so we just want to be able to continue to see this have improved outcomes. So could we have set our goal lower? Yes, but we really reached for the stars and we were very close. So we are excited. While we did not make the progress we were hoping for, we were excited to see all of the growth that we did have within the school year. And we know it's going to continue to improve because now a whole group of students have had illustrative math for a year. So we're going to continue to build upon that knowledge as opposed to trying to get them to learn the curriculum and the way it's structured for the very first time. Okay, keep going. When we look at social emotional learning, as we move into next year, we will continue to always focus on social emotional learning. It's really the heart of our work in education. We believe in making sure that we're planning for and supporting the whole child. But as we move forward, we will be focusing on literacy, math, and attendance. So we will be embedding this work into our goals moving forward. So I do want to say that as I come and look at our panorama results. I just want you to know that we will never stop looking at what our students are saying and using it to move our work forward. But we recognize that as a designated school, we have to focus on 3 goals, and the ones that are going to impact our designation are centered around attendance. So we will embed social emotional learning into that because we know it'll be critical for our students to be at school. We know it needs to be a warm, welcoming climate that they want to be at. So that's how we're going to kind of merge our social emotional learning goal into our attendance goal for next year. So with that, we are also utilizing the zones of regulation, and we really wanted to see an increase of our students being able to remain calm even when someone is bothering them. And that's a hard skill, even when we think about that for adults. We all get triggered. We teach our students about triggers, how to respond to triggers. As adults, we try to remember that we get triggered and what is our optimal way to respond to those triggers too. So we really make sure that we think about what is our character trait of the month. We have discussions around that. We celebrate our students who are being recognized for character trait nominations each month. We also look at our social emotional learning competency. So we're not just looking at the zones. Like, this is our measure, but there is instruction that's happening each and every day through our social emotional learning curriculum. We utilize Second Step, but we supplement that within our morning meeting structure to make sure that we're also moving forward with the monthly focuses. And so we really wanted that to shift. I made sure to go back and look to see, like, what were our trends, because we didn't meet the goals, so what can I share? In the fall, we started with 46% of students being able to remain calm when someone bothered them. It went down in the winter to 42%. And so while we didn't make the projected growth of 55%, we did actually go back up to 48% of students being able to remain calm. In the spring, if you've been in schools in the spring, that's also a challenging time. So I think also our work is going to be able to help students identify, wow, did you see that? You were able to stay calm, because we're asking them to decide for themselves, did they do that? And I think as we continue to name for students, you did a great job staying calm, even though I know they were bothering you, and I hope they will begin to be able to recognize that even more, to have more positive self-reporting, because we're asking third, fourth, and fifth graders to identify this for themselves. So I think one of our jobs and the next step is to also leverage for them identifying that they're doing that on a regular basis, because we did see that. We saw increases of positive outcomes with students, and really having social academic instructional groups to teach students how to respond in a more positive, supportive way to peers. But we need them to see that they're doing it, and to be able to claim that and own, like, I stayed calm even though they were like tippy-toeing on my nerves. So hopefully we can get them to share that out in a more positive way in the future. And then the second goal, of course, was that we wanted to be able to shift from 57% of students who were able to clearly describe their feelings to 70%. It was a lofty goal. We weren't quite there. We got to 61% of students being able to describe their feelings. In the fall and winter, we were at a pretty stagnant 55%. So we were happy that we were able to see some increases, but also recognize that it didn't get as far as we were hoping. So we will continue to work on making sure that our classrooms are inviting, supportive. We have calming spaces in all of the classrooms. And so when I see a student who's able to ask for a break and go take a break, or give a signal that they need to go calm down, that's them identifying their feelings too. So again, I think it's helping make sure that our students can see themselves doing that on a regular basis as well. I thought I heard somebody say something, sorry. Okay. And then our final goal was around attendance, and unfortunately, we did not make this goal. I know it's a district-wide concern for all of us. We also really hope to decrease the number of students and percentage of students in our critical attendance area category from 10% to 6%. We were able to shift down 2 students whenever we pulled the data. I think we pulled it in March, but then whenever we looked at the data again in the spring, we were right back at that 10% and a higher number of students. So we were at 11% of students indicated in the critical attendance category at the end of the school year. So unfortunately, we did not meet the goal. In March, we were still at that 10%, again, not seeing the decreases that we had hoped for, really looking to make sure that we're communicating our attendance policy, because I think there's some misunderstandings amongst families. You know, the parents call in, and I think they think if I call in and it's excused, right, my kid has good attendance. And so what we know from the state is whether it's an excused absence or an unexcused absence, it's still an absence. That's going to impact our data. That's going to impact our learning outcomes. And so when we look at it from that lens, we kind of have we want them to call. That's important. We love that they call, but we also want them to recognize we have to limit the days that the students miss because it's going to have an impact on their academic achievement, but also on our academic performance and outcomes within the school. So a huge shout out to the staff. Again, our environments are welcoming, supportive. We really pride ourselves on being a family. I adore the staff that I work with. I'm still adjusting my mind to losing some of our students, families, and staff. That's hard. It's a shift that is necessary for the program. But even just thinking about it, even though I know it has already happened, I've adjusted my mind. It is also emotional whenever we think about that, but so excited for what's going to happen for them in the multilingual building. So I have to say that, but also really want to emphasize that we've done some critical work with our student engagement advocate who has really sought out some of those most truant students and brought them in. And we found that a lot of it was around issues of like social anxiety, maybe not feeling connected because they started in our school at a later period of time. Some was late as 5th grade. So really trying to foster in on giving them that peer support group. And we saw huge gains in their attendance. And I had one family since kindergarten, and the most I had ever seen that child at school was this year in 5th grade, and the siblings in some of the other grades. And so just to see that, yes, she was still chronically absent, but to know that she left our school with a focus of coming to school makes us feel that she will be able to have that continued trajectory as she moves into middle school, where it will be a little, I think, unfortunately easier to go unnoticed in the larger crowd. So that's what we kept focusing on. You're getting ready for middle school. We need you there every day. And so I just want to highlight that sometimes the data doesn't represent it, but the work we are doing, everyone in the school is working hard from the time we get there until the time we leave. And we don't want to take anything away from that. And we want it to continue to have positive impact on our outcomes. And we do expect that to happen. We don't want to come every time and say we didn't meet our goals, but we also want you to know that despite the numbers not matching our goals, we are really working hard to have impacts with our students and have continued improvement.
Well, thank you. Board members, any questions for Ms. Jackson?
I think it's great you still set high goals. My question is, so is the definition of critical attendance category 20% absences?
Yes.
I'm just inferring that from the.
Yes.
And
so
so
if
that's
the
about how many days?
18. I
18
believe.
days. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if once they've missed 18 days, they're going to stay in that. They're chronically absent and
I see.
chronically truant. So we might get them on a positive trajectory, and they could come and I think I kind of noted this, like several had increased attendance, but they'd already missed 20% of the school year. So we weren't ever going to be able to pull them out of that category. But then we also had other students who were adding to that as well. So yeah, I'm sorry, good question.
And the chronic attendance, chronic absenteeism is 10%, is 18 days was.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I
That's
said
okay.
20%, 10%, 18 days. Yeah.
No, so it's the chronic absenteeism is 10% or 18 days. Anyone else?
Yeah. Statistics can be confusing. Just because you had 10% and 11% doesn't mean that they're the same students.
Correct.
Did you see some progress with some of the families or some of the students at the beginning of the year? Did they make gains?
Absolutely. And that's what I tried to highlight, because I do think, we get caught up in the numbers, but when we see a student or a family who now trusts us, they reach out to us, they're working with us, we're trying to ensure that if the child says they don't feel good, are we really digging into what doesn't feel good? If it's not these things, let's try to push through it. And so we were able to really foster that conversation with families and encourage them, we still need you to be here. Can you come and try? And then if something comes up socially, let's talk about it. We can call home, but we still need you to stay at school. So we did see improvements in that, and we also saw, like I said, the families were really calling to let us know, which is huge. We don't ever want families not notifying us as to why the students were absent. And sometimes it does take having those meetings. We have problem-solving meetings to talk about what is going on. Do we need to explore some mental health support? are there really medical needs? So really trying to go through that process with the family so they know they're not alone in this. We want to help figure out what's going on. And sometimes there weren't any physical medical needs, but we really needed to look at that social support for the students and making sure that they knew we were there to help support them during the day so they didn't want to stay home as opposed to coming to school where things come up. I mean, it's hard to be a kid these days, and it's hard, you know, to kind of manage those peer interactions in a positive and constructive way.
Anyone else? Lola?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So basically, and just to, go off of what you were saying, you find it to be the emotional aspect of it, and which that could be a lot of things, because once they get used to staying home, that kind of becomes the norm.
It's hard to break the cycle. And not for all
Absolutely.
students. There were some students, who did have medical reasons. Some go on vacation. That's still an absence. It's great to go on vacation during the school year, but it's still an absence. And they typically would not come into chronic absenteeism. But yes, we want to make sure we're being mindful of that and supporting the family if those are the situations that are occurring, so we can increase their student attendance.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello. I'm Michelle Turner, the principal at King. So glad to be here this evening. Like the other two principals, I'm here presenting our goals from this year. Our first goal was reading, teaching and learning reading. So we're comparing year 2023 to 2024. So 95 out of 214 students met their reading projected growth goal, which is 44%. We achieved our goal by 12%. That's a big hooray for King School. Several factors that helped support this. We changed our schedule for the second semester so that the grade level bands would have reading or math and not at the same time as every grade level, so that more support staff could push in or pull out. We also made sure that our teachers were actually teaching language arts, ELA, for 90 minutes for each grade level. And we also had a family engagement workshop, and we highlighted 5 populations in our school. We had African American, we had Pashto, Spanish, Chinese, and then we had another group, other, so that if they didn't identify with one of the 4, they also had a place to go. And during this time, we had several sessions where we focused on teaching and having the parents learn more about what reading really looks like at school. What does it mean when a kid is learning how to read or is able to read? What do the scores actually mean on the math test? What could they do to support the learning when something comes home, and so forth like that. So I think those are the 3 major factors that helped. As grade level teams, grades 1 and 2 exceeded their projected growth goal, which means an increase in academic achievement. And in order to have academic achievement, we must exceed the projected growth goals. So for next year, we know that our focus will be on grades 2, 3, and we're going to add in 4 so that we can make sure that grades 1 and 2 from this previous year are still exceeding their projected growth goals. And then we can actually see for 4th grade how their projected growth will help impact the academic achievement. And so we are really looking forward to working with the new Amplify CKLA curriculum and seeing a lot more growth with our new schedules, co-teaching, and everything else that's new in our district. Our goal too is teaching and learning math. 49% of our students met their goal. May not seem like a lot, but we achieved our goal by 1%. 1% is like finding $5 in your pocket, like, woo, I'm gonna take it. So as grade level teams, grades 1, 3, 1, grades K, 1, 3, and exceeded their projected growth goal. So next year we already know we're going to focus on first and third and fourth, and we're gonna add in second only because we had a substitute in one of the second grade classrooms and a new teacher who is not returning. So we need to make sure that those students going into third grade is actually getting more of a concrete understanding of our new math curriculum. Another factor that helped with that 1% goal is that I started going into classrooms during math times and taking pictures and then showing the staff at staff meetings what's actually going on. What does it look like when the kids are moving around in centers? At the intermediate levels too, because a lot of teachers were like, it's optional, you don't have to do it, but it's actually working and the kids are working independently. They're very engaged in the learning. So that helped, and so a lot of teachers were wanting me to come into the classroom to see what they're doing during illustrative math. So we are really excited about year 2 with illustrative math and more growth that we can make. Our goal number 3 was SEL, student voice. This is an area where we made a goal for supportive relationships, but we did not make our goal for social awareness and self-management. So we just received our 5 essential results. So we're now going to see how we can pair that with our, with our social awareness and self-management, because see how they can be blended to see how we can improve overall with teachers and families and students. So we realize there's a need for improvement in these areas. So strategies we will use next year will include Panorama Playbook, more of it. So a lot of our teachers were introduced to it, encouraged to use it, but now we want to make sure that they're actually not just being introduced to it, but hey, how does it look in your classroom? Intentional morning meetings. So we have morning meetings every morning, but now with the new SEL curriculum pilots, we're making it more intentional so that we are gaining momentum in social awareness and self-management. Okay, our last goal is systems, which is attendance. So the funny thing about our attendance is we were at 94%, it seemed like forever, and then we dropped. And I think our biggest mistake was not doing something when we saw the drop, even if it was just like a 1% drop. So we went to 93, we're like, okay, maybe it's because it's the winter months and people are sick, you know, weather is bad. But then we ended up with our end of the year attendance was 91.5. That was an increase of 0.5, but we didn't achieve our goal, which was 93%. So we are already in the process of trying to improve this now. We have already received our attendance yard signs that will go around the neighborhood. I have already talked to Circle K on Lincoln and Bradley and at Dollar General, so that the stickers on the doors can match our signs, because a lot of our families frequent those stores. So one of our themes will be everyone matters, attendance matters, so that when they walk in the door, we need to see y'all at King. And we're not going to wait until we drop. And so, yes, just like Danielle was saying about her students who were chronically absent, we did make progress with those students because I was calling home or driving by their home and blowing the horn to say, I miss you at school. Hey, where your kid at? You know, so before they know when I was calling in the morning, they go ahead and send their kids. So I'd rather have them there tardy or not there at all. So that's one of the things we're already doing for our attendance. And we're going to make sure that the incentives are in place before the huge drop happens, because we noticed once the drop happened, we couldn't go back up. And then we're going to be sharing attendance research at PTO and community roundtables and involving our teachers a lot more. So I would like to thank our staff at King School because majority of us are getting the hang of thinking out of the circle instead of thinking outside of the box, because a lot of times we were getting stuck in the corner of the box. But just like our continuous school improvement plan, we need to continue doing what we're doing that's great and just improve on the things we know we need to improve on. And that may take a little more time, but it's okay. Any questions?
Thank you. Board members, any questions? No. No. Thank you. You've done a really great job here.
Oh, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. This is my last time meeting with you all, so I'm very excited to be here, but sad that I'm off to another start somewhere else. I do have to say that our staff did a phenomenal job with the students making growth throughout the years that I've been at Leo. I think that this was one of the most difficult years because everything comes to a head from being out with COVID and a lot of our kindergarten students not being able to be in person. So we did see a lot of the effects when it comes to their SEL, but we really, really focused on making sure that the students felt safe, they felt welcome, the families had supportive relationships at school, whether they were with me or they were with teachers or other staff members in the building. So I do have to say thank you to our staff for pushing hard, doing their very best, always communicating with me when they were going to be absent, always asking, can I just come in a little bit late and I'm still going to be at work? Those are the kinds of relationships that we need to continue to foster in Urbana School District, where a teacher does not feel like they're going to be penalized for coming in just a few minutes late if they're having an emergency. I want them to be there. You want them to be there. The students need them to be there. So when you have that kind of a relationship as a leader with your staff, I think it really shows, not just in the data, but also in the outcome that you have when you have family engagement nights, when you have families supporting other families in the district when they are in need. So moving forward, that would be one advice that I would give to everybody as a leader, is continue to form those relationships with each other when you need each other and with the community, because these students are all of our students, not just Leo students. So for our first goal, we really focused on attendance. Again, like the other schools, we were really trying to be more rigorous. We did see that we met our goal at the end of the start of the school year, so we said, let's bump it up to 95%. Well, we all know that illness happens. We all know that there are things that happen in families, but we still did see an increase from last year, from last spring, of 2.4%. So we weren't quite off, and we still had some growth from spring to spring, from last year to this year. So although we did not meet the goal, our attendance was still at 92.4%. So that is a lot to be said for our families, especially when there's illness or there's vacations, right? And when you're in elementary school, it affects you a little less to go on vacation than when you're in middle school or high school, when you are really being accounted for those credits in middle school and high school. And not that it's not important, but our families do at Leo School, they do tend to leave the country, right, for some of those things that they only get to do once in a lifetime. So We have to be supportive as educators too, that families have different kinds of needs and their life looks very different than yours. So we did put some incentives in place that were implemented throughout the school year for our chronic absenteeism. So one of the things that we tried were having our SEA do lunch bunch groups with our students that needed just a little bit more support, or checking in first thing in the morning with these students when they were coming in. The other thing that I tried to do was to be visible in the office when some of these students were coming in later and saying, thank you for joining us. It's so nice to see you. Have you eaten breakfast yet? Would you like to come to my office and have a chat? We can do breakfast together. You know, when you have those spare minutes during the day, which are few, it's really nice that people take a little bit of time to actually see some of those students that are coming in a little bit later throughout the day. And they do feel more comfortable, right? They're coming in late. They're already embarrassed to come in late. But if you take the time to say, it's nice to see you, let me get you some breakfast, right? That makes a big difference in their lives. So one of the other things that we did do also during testing dates was to give extra incentives to the kids. Our PTA was able to secure some gift cards and raffle them off to our kiddos that were present for each of the testing dates that their teachers had chosen. And these tests, as we all know, most kids don't like to take tests, so we wanted to incentivize it and give them a little bit of a prize or a little bit of a more reason to be at school during those times. So for our second goal, we focused on social emotional learning, and in the area of self-management specifically. And as I was reflecting back on this goal, I thought, wow, what were we thinking, right? When we make this goal really rigorous, because you think about it in the fall, kids are excited, kids want to be there, teachers want to be there, they're excited, they're renewed. They've had a nice, I want to say nice summer, because there are still kids who don't have the best summer when they're not at school. School is their safety place, and we have to remind ourselves of that. We're all looking forward to having the summer off, but some of them say, no, I want to be at school. I want to be here with you, right? But we did make it more rigorous, and we thought, let's bump it up a little bit more for self-management. So we did see an increase from last spring to this spring of 1%, which is still great. 1% is 1%, like Michelle Turner said. So it is great that we saw that increase too. But self-management, if you think about it, even as adults, it's really hard to manage ourselves when we are having those high emotions. And I can say that personally because it happens to all of us, right? So thinking about our students, I think that if we are going to be working on these goals more rigorous and saying we're going to increase it, because from fall to spring, it looks very different. Kids are exhausted from being in the same classroom, in the same space, with the same classmates. And maybe that same kid that keeps bothering them day in and day out, right? And they're like, I don't know how to manage my emotions at this point. I've been given advice, but I still get mad, right? So it's our job as the adults to provide them with those things that they need to be able to support themselves in a way that they won't need us eventually, right? By the time they leave 5th grade, I'm hoping, yay, they're on to middle school. They are not going to need me anymore. Well, guess what? They need us more in middle school and in high school, because those are the toughest years, in my opinion, to get through as a young adult. So we did have student-led expectation stations that were done quarterly by our 5th grade students. And these were done by our students that were bilingual students too, because then they would be able to speak to both students who speak Spanish and who speak English. We shared the character traits during the daily announcements. We provided SEL lessons during morning meetings. And we also, one of the things that Ms. Oprandek did, our previous assistant principal did, she came up with a system of positive office referrals. So instead of just always giving the kiddos a negative referral for doing something inappropriate or not correct in the school setting, we decided to come up with a system of how do we show that we are seeing their character traits, we are seeing their growth, right? So hopefully more schools will continue to implement these across the board. We were able to see 433 being given out for the total of the school year, and this was just our first year. So this is something that I'm going to pass on to the new principal of Leo. I've already, I think they've already asked about Yankee Ridge also trying to implement it for next year too. So that's something that for the new principal to look at too, to doing. We did have a lot of businesses who were able to give us gift cards for kids, so they could go eat a meal there. They could be recognized. They got to sign their name on the VIP board. They got their picture taken, and they were showcased. on the big screen in the hallway. So it was a big deal for siblings to see each other out there on the screen every day. To see, I made it on the board. I mean, I even had a kiddo who said, what is it going to take for me to get a positive office referral? And I said, let's work on that, right? So, but that was one of the most successful programs we've had. We also did do safety patrol, which our students, our older kids in 5th grade, were able to monitor our students outside and then get to see the older kids doing something they might want to do too. And we did kind of piggyback off of Thomas Paine. So I do have to give them the credit there that we took that from them and we used it as our own. So I hopefully we move forward with that also at Leo School for next year. So our third goal, our SMART goal, was for the area of reading. So we did meet on both of these goals. And I'm sorry, was I supposed to be clicking on there? Thank you. So one of the things that we focused on was for our students who read in English only, or as our bilingual students, they read in both, to move up to 50% or more of them will meet the projection for their reading goal. So we had 59.7%. So that was an amazing feat that they did, because it is reading and it is difficult. And as they keep going on year to year, the information, the text they have to read gets a little bit more challenging. And then for our students reading in Spanish, we did meet our goal also. Our goal was to have 40% of the students meet their projection, and then we ended up with 45.3%. So that was pretty amazing to me when I was looking at the data. Overall, our students exceeded their reading goals for both English and Spanish on the MAP assessment. So putting our schools together for Dr. Williams and Leo, I think is going to be very interesting to see how our kids come together. And I've had the opportunity, and I've been very fortunate to see both groups of students. Obviously, they're different groups now, but being able to see how both schools operate, the two populations in the two schools, and I think it's going to be a great thing. I think it's going to be amazing. So our last SMART goal for math, we, let me see, we actually did meet for our 1st through 5th grade students. So we ended up with 53.5% 1st through 5th, which met their goal. And then kinder students, we had 24% of the students met their goal. And now this is taking into account that we had a totally new math curriculum, the illustrative math curriculum that we're using now. And I think that we should be really, really happy for the results that we had at Leo School, because when you're trying to implement something new, right, it could go sideways. But our teachers, I think, really took responsibility for doing this and really doing it with fidelity and with consistency across the board. So, and asking for help when they needed help. One of the things that one of our teachers, actually a few of our teachers did this year, was to do a lot of goal setting with the students when it came to MAP testing. So it wasn't just them seeing the goal, them seeing the growth, but also having the students come to the table and actually see their own growth and then what they would like to see for themselves the next time around that they took the similar test, not the same test, but a similar test. So it really helped us as a staff come together and pull from our leaders, our teacher leaders, and have them present information, because as leaders, we can present all we want, right? But if it's the people that are actually doing the work in the classroom that need to be the ones out there serving as your teacher leaders in your building. So those are the people that we all surround ourselves with, and I hope that in years to come, they will be the same teachers that will be passing on their knowledge to the novice teachers that are coming through our buildings. So, but thank you to the board, thank you to all the central office staff who has given me all the support in these last 6.5 years that I've been at Urbana School District, and I hope that whenever I'm in town, I get to see some of you out there.
Board members, any questions or comments? Thank you for your exemplary service to this district. You will be missed next year.
Will.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I'm Andrea Jackson, principal at Thomas Paine School, and I really thank you for the privilege to be able to present tonight. Typically, in previous years as a building administrator, we always discuss what our new plans are for the next school year. And so having the opportunity to really look at and review what we've done this year and to celebrate our successes, I feel like is really important. So I want to first look at our literacy goal for this previous school year. Our projected growth was from 26 to 31% when looking at our students. We did all of our comparisons for fall to spring. And looking at that, our 1st through 5th grade students actually met their goal, and they actually exceeded that by 8.5%. In our previous years, we've been doing a lot of professional development on the science of reading, but I'm looking forward to utilizing our new CKLA curriculum resource just to build some more consistency when it comes to looking at our vertical alignment with literacy. So we're going to build upon that growth in utilizing that structured literacy approach and leveraging some of our high quality teaching practices. And it's exciting to see already we've done some professional development with the science of reading and with CKLA. It's exciting to see some of those same components, such as that phonemic awareness, our phonics instruction, and just building that consistency is going to be awesome. Some of the things that we did this year to provide that growth was continuing with the Battle of the Books. If you're not aware with that, Battle of the Books is a program with 3rd through 5th grade students where they're really challenged on some comprehension questions. It gives some competition amongst teams within their building, but then also they also go off and compete across the district. We also utilize our ESSER tutoring program, which was really essential to giving students that additional dose in addition to what they've done with their intervention time. Our teachers also utilize a new program that they hadn't been familiar with, which is Edmentum. It really connected to a lot of what the students were already learning and just making sure that they're practicing some of those foundational skills during their center time. We also had iReads tutors, America Reads tutors, and our learning partner was through the University of Illinois. The Education for Small Urban Communities really was essential in helping with our writing curriculum as well. Okay. John, can we go to the next one? Thank you. For math, I'm happy to say that we met this goal as well. And so when we were looking at our students from kindergarten through 5th grade, our growth projection was we were looking at going from 28 to 33%, and we actually exceeded that goal by 5.1%. And this is a great goal. I feel really happy about it with implementing a new curriculum as Principal Ochoa alluded earlier. It is really difficult to also just implement a new curriculum, but also still expect that same growth that you would see in previous years. And so we really pushed ourselves to gain our familiarity with illustrative math, and we're hoping to do even more with being our 2nd year of implementation. Students were really challenged to take some risks, do some problem solving. It's more than just arriving to that right answer. It's also just discussing different ways of solving problems, different strategies, and really using that as conversation to improve their literacy or improve their mathematics. Some of the things that we utilized for this school year were our iCount tutoring. So in addition to iReads, we also had iCounts tutors for our kindergarten and 1st grade students. ESSER was also another program that helped with that as well. And then we had actual coaching through the Center for Small Urban Communities as well. Somebody that actually came in within the classroom and served as a partner with some of our teachers. All right, so for attendance, I know that we talked a lot about that. You've heard other schools say that this has been a struggle, and this actually is an area that has been a struggle for us as well. We did not see a change, and so, either way, you can kind of look like, well, it didn't decline, but for the critical students, we didn't see a significant enough change. But we know that there's a lot of work that's being done. Throughout this school year, we've done attendance incentives, some parenting calls. Our SEA does home visits. He also does some lunch bunch groups. I know their school talked about that earlier as well, and some more individualized incentive plans. And so we want to make those things just a lot more visible around the school, because I feel even though that some plans were started and ended, not everybody was really fully aware of all the work that's being done behind the scenes to make sure that we are moving some of those attendance barriers. And so next year, we're hoping to take a more proactive approach and making sure that students that have already been identified as chronically truant, that we are we are making sure that we're making those connections earlier on, because we have already a list of those students through our data. And also just making some friendly competition between classrooms on their attendance. We know that it's not the kids' fault that they are not getting to school, but we also want kids to take some type of ownership when they are able to. And just making sure that that progress that we see among classrooms or among student groups, that we are celebrating that along the way. All right. And then our last SMART goal is social emotional learning. And so this was also a goal that we were hoping to increase the number of students that were on track for SEL. This is the survey that students 3rd through 5th grade take on their own. And what we noticed is that the on-track students actually, for their SEL surveys, actually decreased by 4%. And we were a little disappointed about this because we felt that through Panorama, we saw that 90% of students identified that they felt like they had a supportive adult in the building. And so that really came down to the students feeling like they needed more strategies with their own self-management and social awareness. And so we feel like those were the indicators where students were not quite meeting with their SEL goals. And so through administering this, we're hoping to just make sure that we're gaining some more accurate results through Panorama surveys. Sometimes students don't actually understand exactly what is being asked of them, and so also making those accommodations of reading the questions to students to make sure that they're actually entering those responses accurately. Some of the things that we've done throughout the school year, though, are consistent with morning meetings, also FACE events, our social academic intervention groups, which could be like lunch bunch, but also with our social workers, making sure that they're making connections with those students as well. Our check-in, check-out, and making sure that we have consistent calming spaces in all of our classrooms. Some of the work that we're hoping to also implement for next school year is to establish some elementary buildings have an established time consistent for all classrooms that are having their SEL time, their morning meeting time. And so with us doing that as well, I feel like we'll get some better gains in making sure that those times are not met with any interruptions. And at this time, I'll take any questions.
Board members, any questions?
It seems like you've made some really good community partners. And I was wondering, did they contact you or did you reach out, and how did you begin working with them?
Yeah, so this community partner is actually not new or unique to just Thomas Paine. This is somebody that we've used in the past. And so that center for, I think you're alluding to that Center for Small Urban Communities, we were able to utilize them through our IL Empower funding, and also through the regional office. We were also a learning partner with them as well. And so we have our professional development director, Yvonne Smith, who just also said that they would be accessible for us this year, and so we hopped on it. So wanted to make sure to utilize any of the help that is available for us.
I read and I count tutors, are they consistent now? Because I know that they're asking, for volunteers, but it's for a very short amount of time. Has that been helpful?
I feel like it has been helpful. It's definitely been more consistent than it has in the previous years, especially with, coming off of COVID and everything. But for our kindergarten and first grade classrooms, we definitely, you normally see, volunteers out in the hallway helping with math and literacy. So it's been a great help.
Anyone else?
Just like to say I have seen a great progress with what's going on, and thank you, and also your support staff.
Thank you.
It's the truth. Anyone else? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Yankee Ridge. Sorry, my apologies.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. Melanie Furch. I am proud to represent Yankee Ridge this evening, as we know it at this time. And I know that they will do great things with the multilingual program being there, as well as all the things that I could talk about as future for my students. I know that they're in good hands going to new buildings. So I will focus on what we've done this year. So our first goal is that, panorama survey, and that we were going to look at social awareness. And those, of course, are those hard developmental concepts of understanding our feelings, being able to share, being able to compliment others. And so at the K2 level, we wanted to increase our social awareness by 5%. K2, we were at 55% in the spring of 2023, and we just made progress to 59%. So we didn't make all of that, but progress was made. And those are, of course, K2 is really, again, still learning how to grapple with some concepts of sharing, getting along with our peers, as well as those academics that are added to that. At grades 3 through 5, we were at 61% in the spring, and we, while we did make some gains here and there, overall we ended up just at 63%. So with a gain of 3%, but still didn't achieve. We still have a lot of work to do in around social emotional learning. As you've heard earlier, we also have really worked on our character traits, our social emotional competencies, knowing those what that language is, using common language in the building from our announcements, how we are talking with students. Zones of regulation, we too have our chill corners in classrooms, looking at what are our tools, how those differ from students to students or time to time. We have sensory stations in the hallways and the sensory paths. So we have this progressive, we have stations that are tools that we could use at our desk when we're having those moments of frustration. We need our triggers that we were talking about, how we can help to be self-aware that we're needing some time or a break, or what we could do within the classroom if I stepped into the corner, the chill corner, or stepped into the hallway just outside the door, and or those that need call for support and take a longer break with another adult. We also have designated time that we allowed for our morning meetings, or we changed the language to class meetings because some of those happened in the afternoon, and really looked at using second step. And now I'm excited about social emotional having a designated time still, but also really we need to, at the grades 3 through 5 level, I know that they know what the survey is asking, what those questions, but really that common language so that they then can think back when they're answering those questions on the survey to be able to know when that, because they typically are kind of focused like right now instead of over the course. And so really, you know, diving more into those questions so that they have a broader understanding so that when it comes to them being able to explain that, they can do that a bit better. Our next goal. Whoop. Sorry, John, I'll let you drive. Hey, hey. It's all right. It's getting late. This one seems a little cumbersome. We have a lot of work to do around academics. You've heard that from my colleagues. In regards to math, we really, as a building, really embraced illustrative math. We really stuck to it. While it was, we had some staff that the previous year piloted it. And so they were like, we're having to supplement or having, you know, some challenges with it. Did the professional development over the summer and really then was like, aha, if I would have just stuck to the lesson plan, or if, you know, those road, you know, the bumps in the road of what you've heard also, that you got a different answer than, or you got the same answer that I did, but we did it differently, and how that then could be communicated, right? And getting along, working in groups. We're used to I do, we do, you do, as opposed to that whole like, here it is, we do, I'll walk around, let's just see what we get, right? And so we really embraced the bumps in the road and helping kids get to seeing some confidence that I'm better at math. I'm feeling a little bit like, hey, I can do this. It didn't seem as new and for us. So you saw that in the spring. We were at 29% growth, and then we were at 48. So, woo! Math is my big celebration. And I'm going to give us $10. Because in reading, wow, that said as well. So I'm really excited for the new CKLA. The fact that we aren't going to have to, you know, pull different things together. We're going to have all the curriculum. We're going to really look at some benchmark data, progress monitoring, and get ahead and not just wait. So while we did not make the great growth in reading, we did have some fall to spring, we were seeing growth this year. So when I look at just this school year, 38% of our students made their projected growth. But when I look at it as a whole from spring of 2023 to spring of 2024, that looked different. And so we really had a mission to have our students take ownership and be a partner in the work. I wanted them to be able to have an ownership in their own education. We wanted to foster an environment where mistakes were okay. We were given grace, and that we could take risks, and we did that. We also had students making goals when their MAP tests were coming up. Let's make a goal. Even kindergarten, where it was like, this is your number, then we could get you know, another number, or I just wanted to go this far from red into red, or red into orange, or into green, right? They could make goals. And so then we celebrated that with a wall of fame at the end, and so all of our pictures, and so they really had some excitement because we saw some projected growth for all students at some point. Our last goal is attendance. Wow, what else can I say? I really can't, other than we have got to get to school for whatever. We have got to help families. And we have got to make sure that we're having incentives where there's things that they want to come to school socially or academic, to get that part of I know some things. And while those environments of it's tough and anxieties of not wanting to be at school, I think we can certainly make better environments that are enriching curriculum-wise, but also fostering those family environments of that we can do it together and that risks are okay. So we hovered around the 90% mark. We certainly have a lot. When I looked at that number, I was like, woof. When you talk about 135 students that missed 18 days or 10% or more, that's a lot. While we only had 31 students on specific plans, we did see some those that did have increases and gotten better, but that is a lot. We tried to focus on, the incentives, the kindness campaigns. We did a push in the winter months of hygiene again, right? Washing our hands, trying to get enough sleep. I'm talking about those wellness kinds of things that we could do because we know that illness happens, and then that importance of how to call in and make sure that we are at school when we need to, or what needs our families have that we could help out with to try to get kids to school. So that is Yankee Ridge in our year in review. I want to again say that I thank our staff for their perseverance and their endurance that they had this year. I know it was a tough year emotionally for them as well, but I know that our students and staff are in good hands.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Any comments or questions? No. I just want to thank you for stepping up this year as a building leader and supporting your staff and your students. You did a great job.
Thank you. I'll do the same at Thomas Paine.
Yes. So, John, last slide, final thoughts is, again, we look forward to communicating with all of our stakeholders, new goals in the fall, and I want to thank our building leaders too, and I know each one of them came up and thanked their school improvement teams, but you can see the heavy lifting that was done this year with the staff that they've worked with, their whole staff, but then also their teams, but none of it happens without strong leadership. So we thank all of you and appreciate you. So yes. And Adriana, we're gonna miss you so much. Yay, we love you. Yes. Yes, you will. Oh, I've got it in my slides. Yes. Yep. Yep, I've got it in my superintendent reports. I'll share it.
All right, thank you all. Our next report is Board of Education vision statements and priority goal areas are leading into strategic planning.
So yeah, I just really wanted to just share the work of the board, and board members jump in. You have the one pager, the goal vision activity that was shared with us from our consultant from IESB, Dr. Hill, Perry Hill. So the board did get together February 26th and really started some visioning work, and talking about district ends is what our consultant kind of called these activities. And basically, the board's goals are the district's goals, are the ends to kind of meet all the means of what is happening. I know our building leaders have talked about their specific work around improving student achievement, chronic absenteeism, and all of those things. Well, the board's kind of charge for this evening was really thinking bigger and broader around what are the needs for the entire district. So since we were talking about goals and end of the year with kind of the goals for progress for this year, this was a nice segue to be able to share the vision for the goals, the vision and goals for the board for our work moving forward into 24-25. So I don't know if you want me to go through them, Paul, or if you just wanted to kind of say anything about them, or?
I think we could, yeah, if you could go through them, I
Yep.
guess the board members could chime
Yep.
in at the end.
Yep. So, okay, and I know Member Hickson wasn't part of that, so we'll just kind of walk through them very quickly. And so, what our consultant did with us was really talk with us about the vision, and we developed some specific priority areas. So, the areas that you see, the 6 areas are those priority areas. So, student achievement. As you've heard through every presentation that we had tonight and at our last meeting, the need for evidence-based, research-based curriculum has been huge in our district. For years and years, we, didn't have the financial resources. Curriculum is expensive. So, I mean, we spent over $1 million on illustrative and CKLA, and had we not had the ESSER funds and the ESSER ARPA dollars, I don't know where we'd be right now in terms of adopting some of this curriculum. So all of that was just such a, so needed for us financially. And I'm really excited about, and you can already see just with 1 year of the illustrative math work, how much potential there is for growth for future students meeting and exceeding proficiency at or above a grade level. So that was the number 1 goal that the board talked about, kind of, I feel maybe probably the most important is student achievement. So the vision statement was ensure all students meet or exceed proficiency at or above grade level. So the way the consultant kind of got us to this point was we broke up in groups, and board members worked in pairs of 2 or 3. And did like wordsmithing and talking about what each group or each pair thought the vision statement should be. And then the board came to consensus with the consultant in what the statement should read. So the goals to support student achievement, expanding supports and professional development for research-based curriculum, and then meeting the learning needs of each student. The next priority area was dual language. So as you know, we've talked a lot about the dual language program in the last 2 years, really bringing that program together. So of course that was something that was very heavy on the board's mind in February when we were having this discussion with our consultant. So the vision that came out for the future of the dual language program, which we are now calling Yankee Ridge Multilingual School, is to exceed performance standards addressing bilingual, biliteracy, academic achievement, and sociocultural competence. With the goals being hiring talented certified bilingual teachers, yes, 100%, providing staff with professional development and training, and fostering a supportive learning environment. And then next, and I don't think these are in any very specific priority area. I think student achievement was, of course, the biggest, and the others, I don't know that we prioritized them at all after that. So facilities, providing a safe, inviting learning environment is the vision for the board, with the goals being involve the community in the development of long-term facilities plans, assess the efficiency of district facilities, and assess the effectiveness of district facilities. So a lot of this is, you know, we've been talking a lot about energy management, geothermal, solar, and then if you remember in February, we had, again, following this, right before this activity, our one of our study sessions for the month of February was talking about all of our short-term and long-term needs for future projects. So that was also on our mind as we completed this vision activity to provide safe, inviting learning environments. So the focus here was basically on the facilities themselves, but then a goal on the back was also talking about, and I'm going to jump to that one, intensifying safety and positivity among our community of learners. So while the previous goal is our facilities, the buildings, the brick and mortar, this goal is really about within our schools, how are we building community, how are we making sure students feel safe, and how are we improving culture and climate because we've heard a lot this year about discipline and behavior management. And so the goals for Culture, Climate, Community were promoting a sense of belonging among students, staff, and families. And a sense of belonging is a new term that people are using to really just signify having positive relationships, knowing that people at school care for you, wanting to be at school, which is a huge part of attendance, right? Like our students that may not be coming to school every day may not have a connected, trusted adult that is reaching out to them to get them there. So all the strategies that our principals are talking about will help hopefully promote that sense of belonging and improve stakeholder relationships. So this has been a bumpy year in terms of a lot of the initiatives that we had. There was a lot of distrust, mistrust, concerns about transparency. And so this goal is really important to the board from the conversations that I heard, and you guys can share more around how can we improve our relationships with the public, with the community, around future initiatives and future work that has to happen. And then going up to district finances, the vision was to align fiscal responsibility with equal access for student success. So this is kind of more around thinking about our financial resources in an equitable way, making sure that all of our students have access and opportunity for a productive experience in college, a career, or learning a trade, and just making sure that we're putting the funding to make that happen. And then the goals are, again, heightened transparency, really making sure that our community knows what we're doing and why we're doing it, and communicating that better than we were able to do this year, or that I was able to do this year, and applying an equity lens to all the things that we're doing to make sure that everything is kind of undergirded through our equity goals and our equity objectives and tasks. And then lastly, redistricting. So we did this in February, following a couple of our public sessions with our redistricting consultants. So of course redistricting was on our minds, and none of us want to have to wait 20 years ever again. I don't remember who said that night. That we'll never do that again, and that we needed to codify it in writing to say that is never going to happen again. So the vision was to make sure that we're cultivating diverse and equitable schools, and that moving forward, the board would complete an enrollment analysis plan every I think we put 5 years, but I think we said we look at it in year 4 and then come up with a plan in year 5.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we want to codify board policy around this to basically make sure that
Yep.
we stick to it.
And then engaging our community around the enrollment analysis plan. So when we get to that 4-year mark and we're looking at our enrollment and talking about, if we need to do any tweaking with our boundary areas or anything like that, then we would be engaging our community around those decisions moving forward. So those were the vision statements and the goals. And then kind of next steps that our consultant recommended is, one of the things that I like to do moving forward is when we have certain presentations that we align everything that we're talking about with a board goal or a priority area from the board. So everything that we do moving forward should be aligning with the vision of the board, whether it's a goal or a priority area. So he also kind of talked about making sure that we're aligning all of these things as part of our strategic planning. So this is kind of the first step, right? Like you have to have board goals and vision before you put a bunch of people together in a room and talk about a strategic plan. We have to know what the goal and vision of the board is in order to do that.
Board members, any comments or questions? I mean, the idea is that these 6 areas are going to be kind of the pillars for the strategic planning process. We'll have community groups that will meet to focus on the goals the board has set for each of these areas, and then try to come up with plans and metrics to measure our progress against those items.
So these would be our kind of, just like the equity plan, these would kind of be our strands that we'd focus on, and then we'll bring our additional stakeholders together to kind of write some priorities around student achievement from more of the practitioner level. Like, you know, what are we going to do in the classroom, and what is that going to look like? And so, yeah.
So it's late, my brain is foggy, I'm sorry. But I have two questions. I heard all the principals saying all the goals and the percentage they want targeting. Who gives that to them? Who said you have to target 95% or 3%?
Oh, very good. Yeah, good question. So we set that priority as a district. So Dr. Norton worked with them mostly this past year. We look at their data, and then we let them as a team set a goal that they feel is attainable. So we ask them to write SMART goals. So they have to be specific, measurable, but they also have to be goals that they can reach. So yes, they were rigorous. Some of them they had lofty goals that they couldn't reach, but they were really encouraged to think we can get there. So we have given the teams a lot of autonomy to be able to look at the data, know their students, know their staff, and they set those percentages.
Second question is, now that we have those percentage, and of course I understand each school has different population, different needs,
Yep.
but as a board also we have a standard to how we want each school to get for the next year?
Oh, so in the fall, right now they have just kind of shown you all the work they did this year. So they've been heavily writing since the last day. We started the very next day after the kids went home on the 31st, planning for next year. So next year they will bring forward a language arts goal, a math goal, and a chronic absenteeism goal. So we're kind of paring it down a little bit so they don't focus on so much. And really help them write very specific goals, one for each area, with some key ideas and key practices. So the goal is going to be all about the students are going to do this, but then the rest of the plan is, and this is what the adults are going to do to meet that goal. And so we'll bring those back, and then we'll have a district goal for language arts, math, and chronic absenteeism.
So now those goals can be part of the strategic plan?
So, yes, they can, but the strategic plan is a goal for 5 years. So the strategic plan is, here's where we are now, and here's where we see ourselves in 4 to 5 years. So what the schools are doing is writing very specific one-year goals.
Oh,
This
okay.
is
Every year.
Yep. And making those incremental growth. The problem is what John was saying earlier, sometimes we take baby steps while some of our groups are making little growth, other groups are making way more, and it is like we always feel like we're playing catch up. So right now that's what our black students are doing. When they make a little growth, other groups are making way more, so they're not catching up fast enough to close that achievement gap. And so that is what we need to be working really hard toward. That's why we have some specific goals in our equity plan for our Black and Latino students, because they're just not making as much progress at the same rate that other students are. So we need to figure out how we can not just catch them up, but close that gap as much as we can every year. Yep.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Some of the schools, both today and the last meeting, used growth goals, and some used attainment goals.
Yep.
And I had to really
Yes.
watch that. And do we give any?
So moving forward, we're going to give more direction around that. So yes, I think we gave them a lot of autonomy to do, kind of set their own goals as a school. So moving forward, we are going to be more prescriptive in what the SMART goals should be, and we want to see growth goals and not a mixture. We want to be able to compare apples to apples. And when they're all doing different things, and this school's doing that, and this school's doing this, so we want to have some ability to compare a little bit.
One of the other components is when they're doing it from spring to spring, they might not have the same
Same
students in the
students.
fall. So
Yep.
the one school that did do it from fall to spring had a more usable method because they were working with the same children.
Same students, yeah.
Yeah.
These are all good comments, questions.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Next up is our tentative district budget. Carol.
Thank you, Paul. I am here just to present the tentative budget tonight for a first read, and then it will come back to the board next Tuesday for a final approval. Just to kind of give you an explanation, though, the tentative budget is the first step in the process of budgeting. We have to have a tentative budget in place in June, so that on July 1, when our fiscal year starts for next year, we have a budget to work with. Sorry. So basically, we have to have this budget in place before July 1 when our fiscal year starts so that we have a budget to work with. Even though the state doesn't require a budget to be in place until the end of the first quarter. So September 30th is the actual date we have to have a budget in place, according to the state. So we will do this all a second time come September and in much more detail and much better information. So I always have to tell the board when we do the tentative budget, it's called a tentative budget because it is so tentative. There's so little we know right now. I mean, we're required to have this, but we don't have any our fiscal year is not even ended yet for FY24 until June 30. So we're still finishing up the fiscal year. We don't even know how this year ended up, what adjustments we may have to make to next year's budget based on how this year's results were. So a lot of those changes are going to happen over the summer. And then when they come back in the fall, in September, to do the budget again, you will see possibly all these documents again, because these are the same ones we've used for a while, and I think Katie's continued to use them. So it's something you're going to see from now on. I mean, these are the same things we'll talk about every year and just talk about the changes to them, so this will become very familiar with you as we move forward. But pretty much what we're going to start with is the budget assumption document, which I know a lot of you have looked at because I had a lot of questions about it, so that's great. But this document, a lot of these assumptions have been on here for 20 years. I mean, probably since I've been, I mean, there's just things that we've kept on here. It was things the board asked to have put on there, and we've kept on there. But it just, I think this document was done to help explain the thoughts that went into what we did to prepare the budget. Because if we do a budget and make assumptions about tax levies and salaries, and then things end up being different during the year, and oh my gosh, we ended up spending more money than we expected, well, I can go back and say, well, that's because when I built the budget, we assumed that we were going to have this percentage of salary, and it ended up being something else. I mean, and you can relay that to, you know, utilities or anything. I mean, bottom line is we try to put as much in the assumption as we can to show how this budget was built and the assumptions that I used to build it. Because a lot of times, even in the fall, when we do the budget, there may still be some things we don't know for sure, and some things will still be based on estimates. But once we do use history a lot, so we'll go back and look at several years of history and, you know, how much we've spent in certain expenditures to help us build the budget, and all of that. Again, the most recent year is what you use to help get you a better idea what to budget for next year. So all of that will happen this summer. But it is, like I said, the budget assumption document is what I'm going to go through first, because it does kind of lay the groundwork for how the budget's built. And there's a lot of information on here, and we could probably spend hours talking about this just because there's so much, you know, financial stuff that is only related to schools that you will all learn as you become more accustomed to this job. But it's complicated, and it's like a puzzle, putting all the different pieces together. And the biggest revenue source we have is our tax receipts from property taxes. And again, until we know what receipts we have through June, we don't know what to budget for next year. Because we know based on our FY24 taxes, you all have got your tax bills for this year. We know what we're going to get in total, but because our budget starts right in the middle of when everybody's paying their taxes, part of those taxes are going to be in anything received by June 30th is going to be in this current year. Anything that is paid after July 1 is going to be in next year. So until we see what the county treasurer pays us And we'll get a payment on June 29th or 30th. I mean, they pay us right at the end of the month to make sure we get as much of those revenues as we can. But whatever we get there, we know the rest, all the remainder amount is gonna come in next fiscal year. So that's why Katie was very, very conservative as far as budgeting for tax revenues. We put 0 increase right now because we don't know. And we'll know for sure when we do the budget in the fall. And I anticipate there, you know, we will see some increase there. But right now, we're being conservative and we're not showing anything. So hopefully you've read all these. I'm not gonna go through everything line by line, but if you have questions, feel free to stop me. The one I did get a lot of questions about, though, was the Carl tax, the refund, possible refund liabilities related to presents. Because we did settle the Carl case back in 2013, I think it was, that was a good move. I mean, it's a good thing we did that because we got to keep about $6 million that we wouldn't have had. I mean, Carl basically has now won, potentially, unless somebody appeals it again. But that's money that we have that we wouldn't have had. But the present situation is still out there. That one we assume is going to go the same way, but we don't know for sure, and that's that's something yet to be determined. So, but since Carl was recently resolved, we're probably just going to continue to hold those funds until we get direction otherwise, which we foresee will be coming at some point. But anyway, that's what those refund possibilities are, and we've always set that money aside. You'll see it when when fund balances are presented, we always take out that Carl money and show it separately so that the board doesn't think, oh, that's money I can spend in the fund balance. We want to make sure that's set aside because it's money that we may have to potentially repay. As far as the state evidence-based funding, number 3, that $350,000 that is included is basically the minimum that we will get if we continue at Tier 2. This past year, the way I understand it, we actually went to Tier 1 and received over $1 million of increased funding from the state. We're not sure what tier we're going to be in for FY25. So once that information comes out in August, we will know for sure. And again, more information that we'll have for the final budget that we just don't have now. But we do have the minimum amount of $350 in there because we're assuming at a minimum that's what we'll get. The U of I money on number 5, we did get an extension of that for 3 years, but that has now again been reduced again to $35,000. So Jennifer could probably tell you it's getting phased out. I mean, it used to be $365,000, I think, $365,000 when we started back in '94, and it's now $35,000. So.
And it was $150 for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well,
So, yeah.
and part of the reason is Orchard Downs needs a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of families are choosing not to live there. And then we have ESL families that are living kind of all over the district, and they're not all going to King. And so.
Yeah, originally that money was there because the students that lived in Orchard Downs
All went to
were not
King.
paying taxes to
Yes.
Urbana.
Yes.
So it was a way for the U of I to pay us money to help educate those students.
Yeah, I think it was for Orchard Downs students, and because I was around when that happened, and the university's line was that if a student or a staff member lived in an apartment or a house, they were paying property taxes, so those property taxes were supporting the school. But if a student or staff member was living in student housing, they were not paying property taxes. So that's why it was for the Orchard Downs, to make up for the Orchard Downs students, not the students who lived in other
Sure.
areas.
And those numbers are really small now in comparison to what they used to be when you were at King. And they just can't afford to give us $60,000, $150,000 and maintain their facilities and their apartments. And so we've negotiated this every year, and we now are down to kind of this multi-year agreement that we do have an agreement with them that in the event they have more international families coming in and choosing to live at Orchard Downs, and we will come back to the table and renegotiate this agreement. But so.
Thank you.
There's less housing there as well because they raised a lot of their single homes, so we don't have as many.
Okay, skipping down to number 8, I think federal sequestration, people didn't understand what that meant. So federal sequestration, when we sold these QZAB bonds back in 2010, it was a very attractive bond because we
Rate was like almost nothing, right?
It was, yeah, basically the federal government paid the interest on these bonds. They were reimbursing us, so we only had to pay for the principal. But then they had cuts that were made at the federal level, and they said, oh, sorry, we're not going to be able to reimburse you 100% of these interest payments anymore. We can only pay 95% now. And it's been, this 5.7% is the amount that they're not paying. So we have to make up that difference. And it's been that way for many years. But I think the 5.7 has stayed that for quite
So
some
what
time.
are we paying that from? I was the person who kept asking questions.
Facility
about
sales
this.
tax, so we have to make up for that somewhere. And it wasn't something we sold bonds for, so we don't have the money in our bond proceeds because
Right.
we thought the federal government was gonna pay for that. So we're taking it out of facility sales tax.
Out of,
The sales tax money.
facility-
Facility
Facilities
sales tax
tax,
is what's
okay.
actually helping pay for the
Yeah.
bonds as well, the principal portion of them.
okay, okay, thanks.
Yeah. So that's why we try to, it's something that we didn't anticipate, but we have to make up for the money. So we just put that in our assumptions, so it's known that that's, but I think those bonds are actually, I was looking today, I think they're paid off in a couple of years.
That's right.
I couldn't believe. But yeah, they're gonna be paid off here pretty soon. And number 9, this is something new. The Education Fund assumes we're getting an $850,000 credit for our energy incentive for our geothermal system that was in place at Thomas Paine. So that's huge. But it is one-time money. I asked Katie about this, and she said it might be something we get there's some additional amounts we might be getting, but again, those are all one-time payments that might come in future years. But we're not quite sure either what the savings are gonna be until this is all in place. So that's something that we'll probably be waiting and seeing how much savings we're gonna have until we start budgeting huge amounts of energy savings for Thomas Paine. The biggest expenditures we have, going on to number 10, is obviously our salary. 86% of our expenses are people. So all of these were approved by the board individually, these different rates. So the only significant changes in benefits as well, number 11, is just health insurance. Most of the other rates have stayed pretty stable. Health insurance always goes up based on negotiations and what we agreed to during collective bargaining. And that went up about 6.25% for next year. Number 13, oh, do I need to explain the TRS cost shift? That's the bold there. Again, that's one of those that's been there for years because the state used to talk about this annually, and it was always a real fear that they might push this onto school districts.
Yeah, since JB has come into office, that they don't really talk about it as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as much, so it's there, but it was probably more of a historical thing, that it was more of a fear earlier on. But I kept it in there, just not knowing what the current situation was. But, yeah, that might be something, if they're not talking about it, it may not need to be in the budget assumptions, but it's something that was pretty prevalent back in 4 or 5 years ago. Number 13, the intergovernmental agreement with the city of Urbana for the SROs is in here, and it's estimated to be, I had 260, but she actually emailed this week, and it went up to like 280, I think, so it might be going up another 20, but in this budget right now, it's 260, is what we had estimated. So that's another increase that will be in there for the final budget. Number 16 is just a general statement. We knew that when we got these ESSER funds for, during COVID, that at some point this money was going away, and the state warned us, you're gonna have this fiscal cliff when that money is gone. They always talked about the fiscal cliff. When that ESSER money is gone, you're either gonna have to stop spending the money or have revenues to make up for all these expenses we were taking on during COVID. So that's what this assumption is stating, and there are some expenses that are moving to the education fund because of that. And it's all, you'll see that in the next document that we'll go over on the summary of budget changes as well. Number 18, I just wanted to point out there will be increases in the final budget for any penalties related to the EEOC settlement, which is fairly recent, but that some of those bills will start coming in as we pay those amounts out. We will have penalties from TRS because now we're over the 6%. Number 19, just wanted to point out that's another board agenda item this evening, that the board's going to approve the working cash and bond funds. We always transfer the interest to the any interest we earn in those funds is always transferred to the education fund. Doesn't have to be. That's historically been done probably forever, just because it's a way that that money, it's another way to get some funding into the education fund. And then the indoor aquatic center loss is estimated to be about the same, 266,000. Same as in prior years on number 20. Number 21, just pointing out, we did not make any changes, which is a little different this year, I think, just because of the situation we're in. We didn't change. The education fund was the only budget we worked on. The rest of them will be changed for the final budget. So we'll go over that in a minute, too. So the rest of the information on here is just some historical stuff that we've kept on there, just to kind of give you a history of all the budget cuts we've made over the years. And I think it's kind of good just to see that, because I forget that we did this. It's interesting to look back at I didn't think it was 14, 15 years ago that we did budget cuts, but it was. So that's a good thing. Don't want to have to go through that very often. Any questions on the budget assumptions before I move on?
I'm curious if number 23 has been on for a long, long time.
That was Tina Gonzalez. I can tell you who had me add that. Yes, it's been on there a long time. And again, if that board member is gone, we probably don't need it anymore, but that's one that she said, we need something in here that says that no new expenditure can be added to this budget unless we have a revenue to cover it. So I should put her initials on it. But yeah, like I said, some of this stuff is very historical. It's stuff that's been on there forever, and I've not taken it off. I don't know that we're following it all the time, but yeah, it's one of those silly ones that's just been on there forever. But that's where that one came from. The summary of budget changes is what I'll go through next. So Katie pretty much finalized all of this. This was her document. So all I did was take all the computations that she'd made. She'd already computed all the increases in salaries and everything and what those costs were going to be. This is a document that basically summarizes, so you don't have to look through 4,500 pages of a detailed budget. These are the only changes we made. So she gave me this. I took these changes and keyed them into the district budget. Only those lines were changed. When we do the final budget, instead of just putting a lump sum for salary increases, we go line by line by line, budget every teacher. We make sure if there's vacancies, we put amounts in for vacancies. So when I say the tentative budget is tentative, that's the difference. I mean, we are going line by line for the final budget, and we go through and make sure that everybody is budgeted in the correct place and at the correct salary. The benefits follow. So all of these increases are in the budget right now for the tentative budget. And then, like I said, when we do the final budget, it will be going through not only looking at the things we know of, but looking at, how did the budget look this year? Wow, it looks like we went over budget. We might need to budget more for utilities at Keene or whatever. So are there any questions on this? As you can see, the revenues, because we don't have a lot of revenue increases right now, or don't know of a lot of revenue increases, they're not covering. It's always, you always know what your expenses are going to be as long as you've negotiated. Your biggest expenditures are going to be known. But we never know what our revenues are going to be at this point in time. So that's why the tentative budget always may look a little worse than the final budget. I can't say it's going to look better, but I can tell you it's probably not going to look any worse than this.
I mean, that's been my experience on the board. It's that the tentative budget looks worse than the real one in September.
Yeah, just because you don't like I said, we know we know a lot of the expenses that are going up, the main salaries, which are our biggest costs, but we don't have a good idea of revenues at this point. So hopefully those revenue estimates will come in and will be higher than what we have included here, and things will look better. But a lot of pieces will come together for the final budget. But because those revenues aren't there, we are estimating a deficit right now of about $2,025,000, as is shown on the bottom here. And the final document, and again, you'll see this a lot too, John. This is the summary, tentative budget summary, the pink one. This is a document that, yeah, again, just in one page summarizes total revenues and total expenses by fund. some of you may not be aware that we have all these funds, but every one of these funds has a purpose. We levy taxes for specific purposes like transportation, education fund. You know, for most of these funds, we actually levy a tax, so we have to keep track of that money separately because we can only spend our IMRF levy on IMRF expenses. We can only spend our debt service levy on our bond and interest payments. And we have to track everything and make sure that we're not spending transportation money on teacher salaries. So that's the reason for all these different funds. I'd be happy to go over that with any of you and spend any amount of time you guys need to understand this better, because I realize it is complicated for somebody that's coming in and doesn't know anything about school finance. But I think there was a question about life safety levy. The life safety levy, you will, we always do the levy in October, November. And that's when we'll determine what we're levying for the following year. And the life safety levy is a certain amount that we can put towards helping pay for life safety improvements in our buildings. We have surveys that our architects do every 10 years where they go through and look at everything and say, you know, this is a life safety hazard, we need to get this fixed. It may be electrical, it may be what other types? I'm trying to think of what other electrical and
HVAC.
I mean, there's just things that are not really plumbing. All our asbestos is pretty much gone, so it's.
Yeah, we always have more life safety projects than we have life safety funds.
Yes, you do. And we've always, again, levied a nickel, which gets us maybe, well, it gets us about, I think, 200 and, for some reason, it's $1.4 million. I'm not sure what that was last year that went in there. Because we used to only get about 230,000 a year. But it might have been bumped up to try to get some more of those. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line. It's 431,000. So that's about right. It's Fund 90 at the bottom there. So that's what that fund is for. We do levy an amount for that, and we use what we can to get what we can done, and there's time limits on what you have to do. You know, if it's a priority one, you have to do it within 3 years and so on, but you'll learn all about that when that time comes. It's once every 10 years we have to do a survey, so. The only funds that actually had deficits in fund balance, which aren't shown on this because, again, we don't know what our fund balance is until the year is over, were tort and O&M. So those are the only two funds that have a carryover negative balance.
Yeah. But
Your fund balance is basically your savings account. I mean, it's the money that you have, and then you get revenues during the year to put in it, and you spend money, and then the fund balance is what you estimate will be remaining after you've finished the year.
yeah, we've carried a negative balance in O&M forever, but it's gotten better over the past 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the two funds that seem to have historically had a negative fund balance, and we've slowly been chipping away at it. The fund balance won't be included here on the tentative budget because, again, we don't have final year-end results yet from the current fiscal year. Again, final budget, we'll have all that information and we'll be able to present it to you, so.
Board members, any questions?
I just pulled last year's to compare what this year's is, and like last year at this point, we had a deficit of almost 12 million on the bottom of the total of all funds, and so I imagine that means we're doing better if we have 1.5.
That was a property tax, that was the,
I don't know what you're looking at. I'm looking, I have the final
That's-
one from
that-
last year.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
due
that
to the
was-
fact that our property tax
property
payments
taxes
came in late.
Late,
Okay,
So it's kind of an artificial,
okay.
Mhm.
I was trying to make a comparison how we stood based on last
Oh,
year.
yeah.
Looked like we were doing better.
So this will be coming up for a vote here in a week. If you have questions between now and next Tuesday, please contact administration.
Yep.
Right.
Thanks.
Next up is the tentative Urbana adult education budget for the next fiscal year.
And Carol's gonna walk through that one too. Shauna, unfortunately, is at her one of her yearly adult ed conferences, and normally she comes and presents and walks through this with us, but she wasn't available to be here tonight, so.
And I can tell you that she did not, this is basically last year's budget, because she has no information either. So she pretty much took last year's budget and has that for her tentative budget. So there are no changes to her budget, again, because once the final budget comes, she actually has her funding information by then, so she can complete it.
Board members, any questions? If it might be more appropriate, I guess, to reach out to Shauna over email in the next 7 days if you have specific questions, because they really can't be answered here tonight. But if you have any, I guess, questions about the process, you can ask. You can ask now. All right. Thank you. Now we can move on to our action items on our consent agenda. 11.1 are our minutes from the May 21st business meeting and the June 4th study session. 12.2 are our bills and checks. Ed fund bills to the tune of $1.4 million. O&M fund bills for $187,000. Bond and interest fund bills for $127,000. Transportation fund bills for $17,000. Working cash bonds for $37,000. School facility occupancy tax for $260,000. Tort for $40,000. Life safety levy for $513,000. Payroll, salary, and benefits for $7.3 million. And Urbana adult education for $115,000. There's a list of personnel items in our packets that need approval. Interfund loans from O&M fund to working cash fund for $200,000. IMRF fund to working cash fund for $300,000. And tort to working cash fund for $100,000. Payment transfer approval we requested for a transfer to transfer interest as of June 30th. It's a permanent transfer of funds from working cash and bond interest funds to be moved to the education fund. 11.5 are administrative personnel items that were also in our packet. 11.6 is approval for June bills for payment. So we'll be seeking pre-authorization to pay bills until we meet again in August. 11.7 is a resolution declaring intent to retain interest earnings as interest and not to accumulate as principal. Sorry, any clarification on that? Sorry.
That is a law that went into place, I think, in 2018, maybe, that said if you were going to transfer like we do every year, you had to have this resolution, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to transfer the interest.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Otherwise it goes into this, it has to stay in the fund that it was earned in.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you. And then 11.8 is a resolution authorizing and directing the sale and disposal of personal property. So these include the Dr. Williams Weeding log, UHS social studies books, trophy case, wooden teacher desks, cabinets, miscellaneous shelving, student chairs, folding table, metal file cabinets, student tables, desks, etc., furniture, and a variety of teacher and student books. If anybody wishes to have any of these specific items removed from the consent agenda, I guess now would be the time to request that. Otherwise, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the entire consent agenda.
I move for approval.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Staton?
Yes.
Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulowski?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hickson?
Yes.
And Member Langendorf, yes.
Motion passes. Our individual action items, first up are gifts. Robin Sonner from Urbana donated $100 to Leland Elementary School. And Jackie Martin from Thomas Paine received an anonymous donation of $1,000 to use at her discretion. Yeah, that's awesome. Is there a motion to accept gifts and send out thank yous?
So moved.
Is there seconded?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.2 is renewal of insurance. Carol, could you provide some context, please?
Sure. We did meet with our insurance broker who presented our comprehensive proposal, which you had in your packet. They are now a member of Illinois County's Risk Management Trust, so we are in another pool again, so that's good that a lot of school districts are going together to help save money. So our rates are going up, but as you can see from the attached rate schedule, it also shows you values that are going up. So when you're insuring more things, we've added on to buildings, we've bought more vehicles, your insurance is gonna go up. So, overall, we have an increase of about 13 or 8%, but you can see that some things went up more and some things went down. So overall, I think it's a good package, and we still have our $10 million umbrella that we put in place to kind of cover us over everything else, so that's always good to have. And our workers' comp and cyber liability are also part of this package, so I would recommend the board approve the package so we can have insurance in place beginning on July 1.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the insurance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further comments or discussion? The only question I have is do you know if any of the deductibles changed?
You can see that it's on that page.
Oh, I missed it. Packet, I guess. Well, I can follow up and.
Sorry, I'm not sure it shows it on this call, but we did have, I think something did change. That's on a different document. I can bring that back next Tuesday if you'd like to see that.
Sure. That's just, I'm just more curious.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Member Hickson?
Yes.
Member Langendorf? Yes. Member Jones?
Yes.
President Pulowski?
Yes.
Member Staton?
Yes.
Vice President Exum?
Yes.
Motion passes. 12.3 is an addendum for auditor contracted services. So again, Carol, context, please.
Yeah, this was a grant that Kelly, who's here, Kelly Russell, received for early childhood for the current school year. And the auditors, we realized that the grant actually requires a supplementary statement to be included in our audit. And they actually wanted an addendum to the audit agreement to show that that was going to happen. So we had to have this added at the last minute, and luckily we were able to get board approval so that we can make sure that we are in compliance to get the grant next year as well. So, but the increase is going to be about $1,500 to $2,500. We're not quite sure, but it's just to add some additional services to the grant and financial reporting in the audit for this grant.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
I move for approval.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
President Pulowski?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Vice President Exum?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Member Hickson?
Yes.
Member Staton?
Yes.
Thanks.
Well, you're moving now.
Motion. Well, so it's actually board policy that we really haven't been following to change up the order of our voting. So that's what she's following.
Well, I moved it around. I just always had you last.
Well. Sorry, I lost track of where I was. Next up, our Board of Education schedule for the next academic year. So this was the list of dates that we discussed at our last meeting. Also changing the time to 6 p.m. Instead of 6:30. So is there a motion to approve the schedule that we discussed last week?
So
Or
move.
last meeting, excuse me.
So move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and second. I think all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up is approval of our closed meeting minutes. Thank you, Lori, for diligently getting those minutes collected. So we need to decide whether the need for confidentiality still exists. Is all a part of the closed meeting minutes, or the minutes or portions thereof no longer require confidential treatment and are available for public inspection. So. Yeah, that's kind of been how we've traditionally done it, and I think considering the breadth of topics we've discussed in closed, that it makes sense to continue that practice myself. But
I agree.
yeah, exactly. So right. So these are things that have confidential. Yeah. Right. So it's yeah. So these are things that we're legally allowed to keep private. And
I would move to continue to keep this private.
all right. Okay. So is there? I guess so that's a formal motion from you,
Yes.
Tori. Is
Formal
there a
motion.
second for it?
Second.
The movement and seconded. Any further comments or discussion? Let's do this as a roll call, please.
Member Hickson.
Yes.
Member Staton.
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Vice President Exum.
Yes.
President Pulowski.
Yes.
Member Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next up is Press Plus 114. So these were the policy changes that we discussed yesterday. Sorry, I keep saying yesterday. Oh my goodness, starting to get late. At our last meeting 2 weeks ago, is there a motion to approve the discussed changes?
I move for approval of the discussed changes.
Second.
The moved and seconded. Any further comments or discussion on them? This has to also be a roll call vote.
Member Jones.
Yes.
President Pulowski.
Yes.
Vice President Exum.
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Member Staton.
Yes.
Member Hickson.
Yes.
Motion passes. 12.7 lastly is organization of the Board of Education. So when we organized after the last election in 2023, it was for a one-year term, and we neglected to re-up this at our first meeting in May. So this is a little bit overdue. We can do this one of two ways. We can go office by office and walk through this, or if someone wishes to make a motion for an entire slate of individuals to serve as officers, we can just do it with one vote if that's the case.
I'd like to move that we continue the slate of officers for the following year, the next year.
Do the office holders consent to that? I'm willing to serve if I've talked to Ben already. He's also willing to serve. Okay.
I have a question.
Sir.
Well, this is not in person,
No, let's go ahead.
but I heard several people during the discussions about for how long you've been president, and that you say that you will be in the board until you don't have kids anymore in school. And I think this is the last year you have kids in school.
That's correct.
So you're gonna keep going in the school
I'm
board
not
for
going to
how-
run for election again.
He's
When
finishing his term.
When
I
is
will-
your when you finish?
My term does not end until 2025.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I'm losing track. 2027, excuse me.
Okay.
Until May of 2027. So I'm not going to run for election again.
Okay. All right.
Every year.
Every year.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
So-
And if you don't agree, you could.
No. I just was
Could
curious
nominate
about it.
someone.
No,
I was-
yeah, no.
I gotta nominate hey, you, Tori.
Well, I was trying to do Sherry, but she refused.
No, I'm gonna do you.
Okay. I'm not sure. Does this have to be roll call or not?
I would do a roll call.
Okay. Let's do a roll call then, please.
Member Langendorf.
Okay. So Sherry made the motion. You're correct. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
So moved and seconded. Now we can do a roll call unless there's no of any further discussion.
Member
Roll call, please.
Langendorf, yes. Member Jones.
Yes.
Vice President Exum.
Yes.
Member Hickson.
Yes.
Member Staton.
Yes.
President Pulowski.
Yes. There is a call for a future special meeting a week from today at 6 p.m., not at 6:30. Superintendent's report.
Very quickly. See you around town. Catherine went over to King where the program is happening. There are about 150 students over there learning both in and out of the classroom, going on field trips around town, and visiting organizations and learning a lot and doing a lot of great things. So that is for the rest of the month of June. So we just wanted to give you a few little pictures so you can see how much fun those kids are having over there. And then Ms. Ochoa, as she was going out, mentioned Camp Invention. So she has been the administrator over Camp Invention for several years now. It's usually held at Leo, which it will be again this year. It's July 8th through the 12th. The reason we put it in here is it's normally full by now, but there are still some scholarships available. So if you're interested, it is a full day program, which is really hard to find a free full day program in our community that, you know, kids get fed, they get breakfast, they get lunch, and they get to be there from 9 to 3:30. So there are not a whole lot of scholarships left, but there are some, and we don't want to leave any on the table. So if you're interested, follow this link, and your students can attend Camp Invention July 8th through the 12th.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It can be any students from the district or just
Any
kids
element
from
case, they have to be, it doesn't matter what school they go to.
Okay.
Yep, they take kids from all over the district. Yep. Online registration, again, is open, and so I just want to encourage people to get in there and register. We're a little behind where we were last year in terms of our numbers, so we really want to get families in there and get you guys registered before our new families come and register July 31st. Our offices are closed. I know there have been a lot of Juneteenth activities in the community on Saturday and on Sunday. And so tomorrow is the official Juneteenth holiday, and it is a holiday in the state of Illinois. So there is no, none of our programs are happening, and central office is closed tomorrow. June 22nd, and you have a flyer, and Tori's probably going to talk a little bit more about this, but Saturday, June 22nd is our neighborhood Jetty Roads Day in the King Park neighborhood. So I'll let Tori talk about that during her board report. Nope, you go ahead. Yeah. It is something that we have done. It's a kind of a staple in our community. I don't know how many years we've been doing it now, but Tori is directly related to Jetty Road, 26th annual, there it is directly related to Jetty Rhodes, who was a pillar in the King neighborhood community. And so this celebration is done every year in collaboration with Urbana Park District and the King Park neighborhood. And it's just a fun way to come out and have a lot of fun. It's going to be hot, so bring water and some shade. July 29th, registration assistance for our Spanish and French speaking families at Yankee Ridge. We do this every year because we know that sometimes going through the registration process does provide some language barriers and challenges. So we have staff available to assist families to walk through the registration process in their native language. Yankee Ridge from 3 to 7.
Kind of soon, but is going to be a possibility to change the name of Yankee Ridge?
So it's going to be Yankee Ridge Multilingual School for now, is
now.
what we've agreed to with the state. Yep.
A lot of community has trouble
Pronouncing it,
so, including myself.
okay. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, there's
But
a
we-
whole board policy
yeah.
that surrounding any sort of facility name change that we would have to follow. So
Yes. So if there's someone who wants to send a letter or petition, you have to have, I will send you the board naming policy language. So you have to get so many signatures and so many letters. It's not a lot. And then those come to the board. We put together a committee, and then the facility naming committee kind of determines what the name is, and they bring it back to the board. But for now, because, yep, Yankee Ridge Multilingual, just so people are aware that is the dual language school now. Yep. And then centralized registration for new families, July 30th from 2 to 6, and July 31st from 9 to 1. And that's it. FOIAs.
yeah, there was one completed FOIA since our last meeting, and that was from Tom Schroeder. I am requesting EEOC versus Urbana School District 116 settlement agreement and all invoices for legal services pertaining to the case and the precipitating complaints. Board reports. So to kick off the board reports tonight is with an initial discussion of our Board of Education goals and study topics for next year. So we'll kind of start the discussion tonight, and then we'll kind of finish it off at our first meeting when we come back in August. These are concrete things we want to accomplish as a board next year and specific study topics we want to do. This helps administration kind of plan out our calendar for the whole year, so we don't stick a whole bunch of work items and study topics all around the end of the year, to kind of even out the length of our meetings if we can. So,
You want to share Ben's? I think.
yeah, so Ben had a study topic he wants us to discuss, and that is, let's look at cell phone policy in our buildings. Do we want to consider something a little more stringent, including possibly even banning cell phones in some of our buildings or all of them? So that's what Ben. I was thinking as well along those lines, having an examination of our social media policy as a district as well. We have social media accounts that are used to promote clubs and groups that aren't really under the ownership of the district. We've had instances in the past of staff members doing live broadcasts over social media, which I'm not exactly comfortable with personally. So I think kind of an examination of those policies, I think, would be appropriate. Anyone else? I think.
And I know this would be the time. Regarding kindergarten transition, we've done a lot of, we're going to continue doing a lot of work on supporting the sixth graders in the new sixth grade center. And I'd like to see how we can support kindergartners so that they can begin in a successful way. I think what I'm concerned about is that many of these young the students coming from early childhood are going there and they're going to school on a half day, and yet we want students to be able to function in a full day program. And I just would like to see how they're functioning during the school year next year, to see if we can make any changes to the kindergarten support personnel and programs, and if we might have to initiate some type of transition from kindergarten to first grade if the students are not capable of meeting the learning standards or the learning needs, so that they don't continually, I don't want to say fail, but have difficulties, so that we can address those before it gets in the higher grades.
So we have a kindergarten transition coordinator, but one of the things we cut years ago when we did budget cuts last time is we used to have kindergarten transition staff at every school. Now we have one person.
Yeah.
And so we had, we had one at every school for a while. Then we went down to 3 that shared 2 schools, and now we have 1. And so that is a really worthwhile topic, I think, to talk about.
Yeah,
So,
I'd like to just make sure that those children have support so that they can have positive learning experiences. And then we also talked about getting parents involved throughout the district, and maybe we can address some ways in which we can have parents come to schools or come to meetings throughout the entire district, and not just little pockets of parents. And also, obviously, the strategic plan, implementing those.
I mean, I think it's going to be the number one task for us to accomplish as a board next year, is a strategic plan. But go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, this may be too specific for what you want, but I would really like to have us work on ideas about getting kids to and from school. I'm going to give an example. I told this to Paul, that when I was subbing as a teacher aide in 2018, there was a family who lived near Yankee Ridge who had a child who had some physical health issues. And he needed someone with him all the time, and I was his aide for a number of days. And he would just fall down, and his mom came to school, and she and I, in kind of getting him awake, she and I sat and talked for quite a while. And she said how wonderful it was to be close to a school that she could walk to, because even if they were late, the kids could get to school, rather if they missed the bus, But then here she had this sick child, and there was no way she could get this sick child home. And I would like to see the district work on, are there ways, I don't know what we could do. Could we have a little van? Could we, you know, that just help people who don't live close enough to school to get their kids to school. It seemed like attendance is, you know, people were all talking about attendance. And I would like to see if there are some positive ways that we could say to parents, we really need your kid in school, and this is what we can do, help you with, or something, I don't know. It would
No.
cost some money, I'm sure, so.
Sure, but it seems like it would be supportive, like you said, of one of the pillars that all of our buildings had for one of their goals, so that's great.
And I'm hoping that it's gonna improve, because right now we're shipping kids. I mean, you heard the bus study, our transportation study, and how we're so inefficiently transporting kids across all the different boundaries because of the overflow, which we won't be doing that, because a lot of those students will be walking to DPW now, so that'll help us free up some transportation, so.
Wouldn't that fall in, under wraparound services as well? With
Sure.
each, school trying to
In a
figure out?
specific instance,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
for a special case like what
Yeah.
Jennifer's talking about, sure.
So,
Oh,
is it-
no,
go
thinking
ahead.
about something, family engagement and community engagement to recover a little bit of the trust. I know that was a lot of saying that we are not very clear with the community, and there is a way how we can improve our citizen statement time and our interaction with the community.
I'm hopeful that we can get some great ideas to come out of the strategic planning process on that, but I think also having a specific discussion of that is important. Another study topic we haven't done in my time on the board, I think is overdue, is presentation on our industrial arts program or our trades,
yeah.
our trades teaching at Urbana. I think that's something that I would personally like to see emphasized and grown in our district.
Oh, we've been working on it, so there are
Yeah.
a lot of really good things happening, yeah.
So I think that'd be a good highlight.
Yeah, we did a little bit about career and dual credit, and but I mean, Mr. Westerman at the high school and things that some of them are doing are just phenomenal. So yeah.
Just thought maybe, I was thinking even starting this summer, working on something where we could, you know, to get the kids to be engaged before school actually gets in, because I don't think that they see enough of each other until they get to school. And even with the fights, they don't even know who they're fighting. So I think it would be important to, you know, kind of engage them before they even start to school. Maybe just keep up with that, you know, periodically throughout the year.
So Lala, you brought up one last time that I don't want to put words in your mouth. Did you want to talk about our citizen statement, public statement? I know you mentioned it last time. Is that something you still like to do? Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd have
Okay.
we'd have to schedule an actual policy. So usually on our agenda, there's usually a spot for policy discussions, and we could certainly make sure that's on the
That's the
agenda.
policy one, yeah.
That's on the agenda, or on an agenda. Probably should do it earlier in the year.
Yeah, early in the year, yeah.
We did receive a press for 115,
I really don't know. I mean, I just feel like it's not practical. I feel like it's not practical to have 2 hours of public statements with repetitive topic, 5 minutes each. I know it's important, it's a way for us, but also limited as an extent or time. So I think it will be more efficient if there is a way of direct communication with the community, not just sitting in here listening.
Understood.
And there are other things like city council and other districts do. They set time limits, so public comment is an hour at the beginning, and then you come back to it at the end, or set a certain number. So I think there are a lot of different models out there that the board can talk about what they like to do.
Anybody else? And this is just an initial discussion, so take your month off in June and July, and if you're thinking about specific things we want to do next year, we'll have an opportunity to kind of finalize this list at our first meeting in August.
I think mine have already been said. Career and technical ed
Yep.
programs and partnerships.
Yep.
Dual enrollment. I wouldn't mind hearing more about technology use in the classroom.
Yeah.
Even if it's just something brief. I mean, I don't need a huge report. I had a bunch written down, but as I looked at it, it's all stuff that's covered at some point in somebody's report. So I didn't have a ton of new things to add. My list is pretty much stuff we're kind of already hearing about.
Well, this is a good time for us to talk about technology use in the classroom, specifically because we've been one-to-one for a while, but now we're going to be shifting to new curriculum, and what is that going to look like, and especially at the elementary level. So.
There is something else that I'm been thinking. I just don't know how to phrase it, but I see that the middle school is having a lot of trouble with violence, with all those fights, and also vaping. I'm not so sure how the board can address that, or what we can propose for that.
For vaping?
Vaping and violence.
So you're talking specifically
In
in middle
middle school.
school. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've been talking a lot about that. So that is an ongoing conversation.
So do you mean specifically like changes to the
I'm not so sure, like maybe adding extra stuff, counseling, mentoring,
I see.
related with prevention of those violence, because we know that the kids bring that violence from the community, and we cannot really do much in the community. But if we prevent that those conflicts can come back to the school, as well as vaping. And I know vaping and drugs comes from home and community, but I feel like as a school we should be able to do something.
I agree.
This is all great. Anyone else? Okay. We'll revisit this again in August. Let's continue on with board reports. Talk about
Jetty Roads Day is this Saturday. It is a 100% free event. Free food starts at 12:15. We will have grilled hot dogs, chicken, chips, sides, cookies, drinks. So that's until we run out. Usually by about 3 we're usually out, but we order a good deal of it. We have a barbecue cook-off that will be happening. That is, I think we have maybe 6 contestants right now for that. So they'll be cooking both ribs and chicken. We'll have some judges. Our MC for this year is Michael Turner. We are honoring 4 individuals. The first is Dr. Will Patterson, who of course has passed away, but he is being honored. Herbert Burnett is being honored. Curtis Blandon Sr., who is a coach in Urbana, and then Kiara Moten, who is a student in Urbana. So lots of Urbana representation. We do have a couple of dance performances, including Urbana's, the high school group will be on the afternoon side of the performances. And yeah, we've got lots of great things going on. We give out tons of free raffles. So we'll be giving away some bikes, tons of toys, some gift cards. So yeah, it'll be a good time. It will be hot. There are 76, I believe, organizations that will be there handing out information on everything. I mean, we've got the city is there, Carl's there, Parkland's there, pretty much every agency that gives some sort of help within the community will be there, and a lot of them will also have giveaways at their tables and games that kids can play. We have a dunk tank, we have an obstacle course. The police department and the fire department will be both there with kids able to get in and out of their vehicles. The Urbana Park District will be there with Urbana. Public Health has a new van kind of mobile. They'll be there as well. And we're also doing a blood drive at the same time,
wow.
a sorority and fraternity We'll have Impact Life there to do a blood drive. So huge event, again, completely free to the community. So that is from 12 until 4 at King Park in Urbana.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Any other board reports?
Well, last time I talked about the Urbana Pops Orchestra, and they will have their performance on YouTube, and I just hope that I'll send out the link once they post it. That's amazing rising junior that we have in our community who's a phenomenal pianist. And I think everybody was just so inspired and so felt privileged to watch him play. He's just so talented, and I think that he's going to have a terrific career if that's what he wants to go into. But yes, I really encourage you to watch that because we're pretty impressive student. And also regarding the pantry, because it's summer school at the high school, I've continued offering food in the commons during lunch between 11:30 and 12 on Thursdays. And then I'll also be in the pantry, and students can come and shop after school from 1 to 1:30. So I hope students who are interested in getting some food for the weekend can come and get some.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
The University of Illinois will be offering a Teach Academy July 17, 18, and 19. And I forgot to bring the brochure, but the middle day, the 18th, July 18th, will be the person who developed our new illustrative math. And you have to be signed up for the whole conference, and that's for teachers, but the 9 a.m. keynote is open to the community. So if anybody is interested, I thought you might want to put that on your calendar, but I will bring and there's the Ladston Billings, who is a pretty famous researcher. She'll be there one day.
First
Yeah.
day.
And anyway, I just thought people might want to get that on their calendar.
That's great. Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I guess we're done. We'll see you in a week at 6 p.m. Thank you.